The clock of the universe turns backward. The frantic electric hum of the modern world begins to fade, replaced first by the rhythmic chugging of industry, then the strike of iron on anvil, then the soft murmur of the plow, until finally there is only the sound of wind moving over an endless ocean of grass. We are drifting into the deep well of time, descending through the layers of history, past the ruins of empires, past the first campfires of the Neolithic, sinking deeper into the velvet darkness of an epoch so remote that the very stars overhead form constellations we would not recognize. We arrive in the Pliocene, or perhaps the early Pleistocene. The air here tastes different, sharp with the scent of ozone and the heavy, musky perfume of undiluted nature. We are standing on the edge of the Great Rift Valley, the cradle of our becoming. It is a world of blinding light and profound shadow. The sun is a hammer, striking the earth with a relentless golden intensity that bleaches the bones of the fallen and forces life to seek the shelter of the acacia. Here, in this vast theater of evolution, the grass whispers secrets to the hot wind, a dry, rustling sibilance that has not changed in 3 million years. The horizon stretches into infinity, a shimmering line where the heat waves dance, blurring the boundary between the earth and the pale, expansive sky. Walking through this tall, golden sea are figures that command both our recognition and our estrangement. They are the walkers of the rift, the upright apes, the dawn humanity. Look closely at them as they move. Their gait is familiar, a bipedal stride that frees their hands, but their silhouettes are distinct, possessed of a wild muscular density that we have long since traded for grace. If you were to approach one of these ancestors, an Australopithecus, or perhaps an early member of the genus Homo, and look into their face, you would be met with a visage of raw, rugged power. It is a face built by the necessities of a brutal and indifferent world. There is no softness here, no superfluous flesh. The skin is leathered by the sun, etched with the maps of survival. Above their eyes, a heavy ridge of bone protrudes like a granite shelf. This brow ridge, the supraorbital torus, acts as a shade against the glare of the equatorial sun and a structural reinforcement for the skull. Beneath this heavy lintel, their eyes serve as deep-set sentinels, dark and intelligent, scanning the swaying grass for the tawny shape of a leopard or the telltale circle of vultures that marks a scavenging opportunity. But it is the lower half of the face that truly separates them from the reflection we see in our mirrors today. Focus your gaze on the jaw. In this ancient epoch, the mouth is not merely an orifice for eating or speaking. It is the primary tool of engagement with the physical world. It is a biological vice, a mechanism of immense force designed to crush, tear, and grind. The jaw projects forward, a feature known as prognathism, creating a snout-like profile that speaks to the animal lineage from which we are slowly emerging. And here, in this geography of bone, there is a striking absence. There is no chin. Trace the line of the mandible with your mind's eye. From the lower lip, the bone does not jut forward to form the mental eminence, the chin, that defines the modern human profile. Instead, it slopes backward, receding toward the neck in a smooth, unbroken, convex curve. It is a retreating rampart. To a modern eye, it might look weak, a featureless slope where a defining ledge should be. But this is an illusion of our aesthetic bias. This receding jaw is not a weakness, it is a fortress. It is a shape dictated by the laws of physics and the brutal requirements of the ancestral diet. This is a face built for stress. In these dry savannas, Soft calories are a rare luxury. There are no cooked meals, no processed grains, no tenderized meats. Survival depends on the ability to process what the land offers. Tough, fibrous tubers buried deep in the hard-baked earth, sedges with the texture of wood, raw meat scavenged from a kill, and nuts with shells as hard as stone. To extract the energy from these sources requires a chewing apparatus of industrial capability. Imagine a day in the life of this ancestor. The morning mist has lifted, and the hunger is a dull, constant ache in the belly. He finds a patch of tubers, digging them out with fingers calloused and strong. The roots are covered in grit, tough and unyielding. He places one in his mouth, between the broad, flat, grinding surfaces of his molars. The jaw closes. The massive masseter muscles, anchored to wide cheekbones and running up the side of the skull, contract with hydraulic power. If he had a chin, a protruding point of bone at the front of the jaw, it might be a liability under these specific forces. The architecture of his skull is designed to dissipate the massive vertical stress of chewing directly up through the facial pillars. The receding chin is part of a simian shelf design, a thick, reinforced internal buttress that prevents the mandible from twisting or snapping under the sheer load of the bite. The bone is thick, dense, and heavy. It is a mask of calcium built to withstand the daily marathon of mastication. For hours, he must chew. The rhythm of the savannah is the rhythm of grinding teeth. Unlike us, who can consume a meal in minutes, the ancestor is bound to the slow processing of raw fuel. The jaw is a millstone. The sound of his eating is a wet, crunching cadence that blends with the chirping of insects. He is tethered to the act of eating, his face a dedicated machine for breaking down the stubborn cellular walls of plants. In this world, the jaw is survival. A broken jaw is a death sentence, a silence that leads inevitably to the dust. And so, nature has over-engineered this feature, piling bone upon bone, sacrificing the delicate balance of the future for the rugged endurance of the present. This heavy lower face is also a shield. In a life lived without the distance of projectile weapons, where disputes might be settled with teeth and sudden violence, the robust mandible protects the vulnerable throat and the complex architecture of the airway. It is a battering ram of a face. When the ancestor bares his teeth in a display of dominance or fear, the jutting jaw presents a terrifying weapon, a wall of enamel and bone that signals an ability to do harm. Deep within the marrow of this bone, and in the double helix of the DNA that builds it, the chin is a ghost. It is a latent possibility, a geometric abstraction that has not yet been called into existence. The genetic switches that will one day sculpt the mental eminence are currently set to off, or rather, they are set to a different program entirely. The code of life here is focused on reinforcement, on the accumulation of density. The mistake or mutation that will eventually erode this heavy bone, that will shrink the teeth and retract the face, has not yet occurred, or if it has been weeded out by the unforgiving selection of the wilderness. To have a smaller, weaker jaw in this epoch is to starve. As the sun climbs higher, baking the clay of the savannah, we can see the duality of this existence. The body is capable, yes, but it is also heavily burdened. The skull is heavy. The muscles required to operate this jaw demand significant energy. The ancestor carries the weight of his history on his face. He is a masterpiece of the Pliocene, perfectly adapted to a world of raw chewing, but he is locked in that adaptation. Let us sit with him in the shade of a baobab tree as the afternoon heat peaks. He is resting, his chest heaving slightly. The flies buzz around his face, but he ignores them. If you were to touch his jawline, you would feel the solidity of it. No jutting point, just the smooth, hard curve of bone slipping back towards the throat. It feels like the jaw of a chimpanzee or a gorilla, yet different, poised on the brink of something else. This bone has a memory of millions of years of ancestors before him, all of whom survived by the power of their bite. It is an ancient memory carved in calcium, a testament to eons of grinding tough vegetation and tearing at the scraps left by lions. The environment demands this heaviness. The Pleistocene is a chaotic era, swinging between wet and dry, warm and cold. When the droughts come and the soft fruits vanish, the population relies on fallout foods, the hardest, toughest resources available. It is the jaw that stands between life and extinction. The individuals with the most robust mandibles, the thickest enamel, and the most powerful chewing muscles are the ones who see the next sunrise. Evolution is a sculptor, and here, the chisel is hunger, and the medium is bone. The chin cannot exist yet because the chin is a luxury of a lighter face, and this is a time of heavy burdens. As evening approaches, the sky turns a bruised purple, and the shadows lengthen across the Rift Valley. The predators begin to stir. The ancestor climbs into the safety of a rocky outcrop or high into the branches. The night is filled with the coughing roars of leopards and the laughing calls of hyenas. In the dark, the heavy brow and the strong jaw are not just tools for eating. They are the armor of the self. They are the physical manifestation of a will to survive against overwhelming odds. We must understand that this lack of a chin is not a primitive failing. It is a perfect solution to a specific set of problems. It is a design that reigned for millions of years, far longer than our own modern faces have existed. It allowed our lineage to spread across Africa, to endure ice ages and interglacials, to diversify into robust forms like Paranthropus, who took the heavy jaw to its absolute extreme, and the more gracile forms that would eventually lead to us. But the winds of change are blowing. Somewhere in the distance, in the dim future of this narrative, a spark is waiting to be struck. A new relationship with the world is coming, one involving stone tools that cut meat, and eventually fire that softens the earth's bounty. These innovations will change the pressures on the face. They will invite a softening. However, for now, in the velvet darkness of this ancient night, the chin sleeps. It waits in the silence of the genome, a potentiality unexpressed. The face of the ancestor remains a mask of utility, a sloping, powerful visage that speaks of the raw struggle for existence. It is a face that does not question. It survives. It bites down on the world with all its might, holding on to life with a grip of bone that has not yet learned to let go. The stars wheel overhead, the same stars that watch over us, but the eyes that look up at them are framed by heavy ridges, and the mouth that breathes in the night air is a fortress without a prow. The heavy mask of the ancestors is firmly in place, and behind it, the slow, quiet intelligence of humanity is gestating, waiting for the day when the burden of the jaw can be set down and the face can reshape itself for a new kind of voice. Consider the silence of the fossil record. When we dig up these skulls from the red earth of Hadar or the caves of Sterkfontein, they speak to us in a language of shape and density. We hold the cranium of Homo erectus or Australopithecus afarensis in our hands, or the hands of our scientific proxies, and we are struck by the weight. It is not just the mineral of the fossilization, It is the architectural weight. The bone is thick. The attachment points for the muscles are rugged ridges, scaring the bone where the sinew once pulled with incredible tension. Contrast this with the skull of a modern human, which feels almost like porcelain in comparison. Thin, delicate, globular. The ancestor's skull is a helmet. Ours is a bubble. The transition from one to the other is the story of our species, and the chin is the final punctuation mark of that story. But here at the beginning, there is no punctuation. There is only the long, run-on sentence of survival. In the deep time of the Savannah, the concept of beauty is also different. We might find the lack of a chin jarring, a deformity of the profile. But to the ancestors, this sloping jaw was the norm, the standard of health and vitality. A mate was chosen not for the sharpness of their profile, but for the robustness of their frame, the obvious capability of their mouth to process food for themselves and their offspring. Sexual selection, that other great sculptor of biology, had not yet fixated on the triangular point of the chin. It was perhaps focused on the width of the face, the symmetry of the ridges, the sheer imposing reality of the head. Imagine the tactile experience of being one of them. To run a tongue over the teeth was to feel a fortress of enamel. The dental arch was longer, U-shaped like an ape's, rather than the parabolic arch of modern humans. There was room for every tooth, no crowding, no impacted wisdom teeth. The jaw was spacious enough to house the machinery of survival without compromise. The modern mouth is a crowded tenement in comparison to the spacious cathedral of the ancestral jaw. We have gained a chin, but we have lost the room for our own teeth, a trade-off that plagues us to this day. But in the ancient Savannah, there is no orthodontia, only the brutal efficiency of natural selection. If a tooth rots, the jaw must work around it. If the jaw breaks, death follows. And so the bone is piled high, a guarantee against the random violence of existence. As the moon rises, painting the savannah in silver and gray, the ancestors huddle together. Their breathing is soft, a collective rhythm in the darkness. They are the dreamers of the dawn, carrying within them the seeds of everything we will become. They do not know that their faces will change. They do not know that the massive muscles will shrink, that the heavy bone will dissolve into the mist of time, leaving behind only the small, strange protrusion we call a chin. They only know the hunger of the belly, the heat of the sun, and the safety of the group. The heavy mask they wear is not a disguise. It is their truth. It is the vessel that carried the human spark through the longest and hardest miles of our journey. We look back at them across the abyss of millions of years, and we see the absence of the chin not as a lack, but as a presence. The presence of a formidable strength that was necessary to pave the way for our own delicate, thoughtful faces. We are the children of the heavy jaw, the descendants of the sloping profile. We carry their history in our genes, a silent legacy that remembers the crushing of roots and the tearing of raw meat, even as we sip our warm soups and rest our chins in our hands, pondering the mystery of how we came to be. The night deepens. The wind dies down. The only sound is the heartbeat of the earth itself, slow and steady. The ghost of the chin waits in the genetic mist, patient and unseen. The wheel of evolution turns, grinding slowly, grain of sand by grain of sand, preparing to carve the next chapter from the clay of life. But for now, the mask remains, heavy, strong, and enduring, a silent witness to the dawn of the world. The river of time widens now, its current slowing as it winds through a landscape that is no longer defined solely by the brutal dictates of the sun and the rain. We are drifting away from the raw, unmitigated exposure of the Pliocene savannas, moving deeper into the shadows of the Pleistocene. The world is cooling. The great ice sheets are beginning their slow, grinding march from the poles, and the nights are becoming longer, darker, and more perilous. But in this deepening twilight, a new star is born, not in the heavens, but on the earth. It begins as a terror, a jagged scar of lightning striking a dry acacia, a roar of destruction that sends the herds scattering in panic. For millions of years, this orange energy was a god of wrath, a force that consumed and destroyed. But then, in a moment that remains the singular turning point of our biological history, a hand reached out. It was a hand not so different from yours, perhaps calloused and stained with the red earth, trembling with a mixture of primal fear and transcendent curiosity. That hand captured a burning branch, fed it dry leaves, and breathed life into the dying embers. This is the dawn of the control of fire. It is the moment humanity stepped out of the food chain and into a realm of its own making. Watch now, through the lens of deep history, as the scene shifts from the open plains to the sheltered embrace of a cave mouth or a windbreak of stones. The sun has set, and the prehistoric world is swallowed by a velvet blackness that we, in our electrified age, can scarcely imagine. But here, a small circle of light pushes back the dark. The tribe is gathered. They are Homo erectus, or perhaps early Homo heidelbergensis. Their brows are still heavy, their bodies lean and muscled, but their eyes hold a new reflection, the dancing, hypnotic rhythm of the flame. The smell of wood smoke, sharp and resinous, the scent of juniper, pine, or dry dung fills the air, a perfume that will become imprinted on the human soul for the next million years. This fire is more than heat. It is an external stomach. It is a tool of digestion that operates outside the body, and its invention is about to rewrite the very architecture of the bone and muscle that make up the human face. To understand the profound transformation of the jaw, we must first understand the life that came before the flame. Before this moment, every calorie had to be wrestled from the grip of raw nature. Meat was a rubbery, resistant substance, a mesh of collagen and tough fibers that required immense force to shear. Roots and tubers were fibrous and dense, demanding hours of rhythmic grinding to break down the cell walls and release their starch. A prehistoric day was a day of chewing. The jaw was the primary engine of survival, working ceaselessly from dawn until dusk. But the fire changes everything. Watch as a hunter places a haunch of antelope or a bundle of starchy tubers into the coals. The heat works its alchemy. It denatures the proteins, unwinding the tight coils of amino acids. It gelatinizes the starches, turning hard, indigestible granules into soft, energy-rich paste. It kills the parasites and bacteria that once plagued the gut. When the food is pulled from the ashes, charred and smoking, it is no longer the same substance. Imagine the sensory experience of that first cooked meal. The teeth, which once had to act as chisels and millstones, now sink into the flesh with ease. The meat falls apart. The flavors are released, the Maillard reaction creating savory notes that stimulate the brain. What once took an hour to chew can now be consumed in minutes. This is the great liberation. The energy that the body once spent on the expensive metabolic process of digestion and the mechanical energy spent on mastication is suddenly freed. As the centuries dissolve into millennia, this new diet begins to sculpt the wearer. Evolution is a ruthless economist. It does not maintain expensive structures that are no longer needed. The massive jaw muscles, the temporalis and the masseter, which once encased the skull like a helmet, begin to lose their utility. In the era of raw food, a mutation that weakened these muscles would have been a death sentence, a fatal flaw that prevented an individual from processing enough food to survive. But in the glow of the campfire, amidst the feast of soft-cooked food, those with smaller muscles survive just as well as those with the heavy, archaic apparatus. In fact, they may survive better. Building heavy muscle requires protein. Maintaining dense bone requires calcium and energy. As the selective pressure relaxes, a silent error in the code of life occurs, a subtle mutation in a gene known to modern science as MYH16. This gene, which governs the size of the jaw muscles in primates, undergoes a deletion. In a chimpanzee or a gorilla, the muscle remains massive, reaching all the way to the top of the skull, requiring a bony ridge or sagittal crest to anchor it. But in the lineage of the firekeepers, the muscle shrinks. This genetic whisper travels through the generations. It is not a sudden change, but a slow, generational fading. It is like the tide going out, revealing the landscape beneath. As the muscles shrink, the bone that supports them senses the reduced load. According to the biological law that form follows function, the bone begins to resorb. The massive, thick mandible of the ancestors, built to withstand the twisting forces of crushing raw tuber and bone, is no longer necessary. Picture the face of a child born 10,000 generations after the first fire. The heavy, protruding snout, the muzzle that defined the primate profile, has begun to retract. The dental arch, once long and U-shaped to accommodate large, grinding teeth, begins to shorten. The teeth themselves become smaller, gracile echoes of the fangs and grinders of the past. The face is tucking itself inward, moving away from the horizontal projection of the animal and toward the vertical flatness of the human. This retraction is a great recession of the facial landscape. The mid-face, the nose, and the upper jaw pulls back significantly. But here is where the mystery of the chin begins to take shape. The lower jaw, the mandible, also shrinks, but not in perfect unison with the rest of the face. The alveolar bone, the part of the jaw that holds the teeth, retreats rapidly as the teeth shrink. However, the basal bone, the lower structural rim of the jaw, holds its ground more stubbornly. It is a geologic shift in the geography of the face. Imagine a cliff face where the upper layers erode faster than the foundation, leaving a jutting promontory at the base. This is the birth of the chin. It is, in its earliest stages, perhaps not an adaptation for a specific purpose, but a spandrel, an architectural byproduct of the shrinking face. It is the remnant of the old heavy jaw jutting out as the rest of the face melts away in the warmth of the cooking fire. But let us look deeper, beyond the mechanics of bone, into the life of the fire circle. The softening of the diet does more than shrink the jaw. It changes the very nature of time for our ancestors. With the burden of hours of chewing lifted, the day opens up. There is now time for leisure. There is time for the other great human invention, the story. The fire pushes back the predators, creating a safe haven where the eyes can close in sleep without the constant terror of the dark. But before sleep, there is the voice. The shrinking jaw and the changing shape of the mouth and throat are opening the pathways for complex speech. The tongue, no longer trapped behind a wall of massive teeth and a protruding snout, gains a new agility. The campfire becomes the classroom of the species. Here, the elders pass down the knowledge of the hunt, the location of water, the nature of the spirits that inhabit the lightning and the wind. The face is becoming a canvas for communication. A heavy frozen mask of bone is less capable of the subtle micro-expressions that facilitate deep social bonding. As the bone lightens and the skin becomes more mobile, the human face becomes a transmitter of emotion. A smile, a frown, a look of skepticism. These become the new survival tools, as potent as the hand axe or the spear. The gracilization of the skull, the technical term for this thinning and lightening, is a testament to our increasing reliance on wit and social connection over brute force. We are domesticating ourselves. Just as the wolf changes when it becomes the dog, ears flopping, snout shortening, temperament softening, we too are changing in the presence of our own invention. The fire is the first domesticator. It chewed our food for us, and in return, it asked for our heavy jaws. Walk through the camp of a Middle Pleistocene tribe. The air is filled with the sounds of napping flint, the rhythmic strike of stone on stone. A woman sits by the fire, nursing an infant. Look at the baby's profile. It is flat, vertical, the forehead high, the jaw small. This trait of neoteny, the retention of juvenile features into adulthood, is becoming the hallmark of our species. We are the primates who never grow up, who keep the curiosity and the playful plasticity of childhood throughout our lives. The shrinking jaw is part of this package, a biological signal of a species that relies on learning and care rather than instinct and armor. Yet this trade-off brings with it new vulnerabilities. As the jaw shrinks, the teeth do not always get the memo. We begin to see the first instances of dental crowding, of teeth twisting to fit into the diminishing arch. The wisdom teeth, once vital for the grinding of raw plants in early adulthood, become liabilities, impacting and causing pain. We are a work in progress, a biological renovation project that is not quite finished. The blueprint of the deep past clashes with the reality of the new diet. And what of the chin? In these transitional phases, the faces of Homo sapiens emerging from the mix of archaic humans, the chin is becoming more pronounced. It is a lonely sentinel. As the face flattens, the chin stands out, a bony buttress reinforcing the midline of the jaw. Perhaps it is needed to stitch the two halves of the mandible together against the strain of the bite, which, though reduced, is now applied to a much lighter, thinner bone. Like a beam thickened at its stress point, the chin provides resistance to bending. Or perhaps it serves as a counterweight. As the brain expands, ballooning upward and backward to house the growing neocortex, the face rotates. The chin may help balance the head atop the vertical column of the neck, a subtle adjustment in the center of gravity for a creature that walks fully upright. But in the flickering light of the campfire, it is also an aesthetic marker. As the heavy brow ridges fade, leaving the eyes more visible, and the snout recedes, the chin becomes the punctuation mark of the face. It defines the human look. When a member of the tribe looks across the fire at a potential mate, they see this feature. It captures the light. It gives definition to the lower face. In a world where the heavy, sloping jaw was once the sign of power, the defined, jutting chin begins to signal something else. A belonging to the new people, the ones who have mastered the fire, the ones who speak with complex tongues. The seasons turn. The great herds migrate across the tundra and the Savannah. The ice advances and retreats. Through it all, the fire remains the center of human existence. It is the hearth, the heart, the home. And around this fire, the heavy mask of the ancestor is slowly melted away. The jagged, brutal lines of the Pliocene are smoothed into the vertical elegance of the modern human. We are witnessing the shedding of our armor. We are becoming softer, yes, but also smarter, more connected, more reliant on the external brain of culture and technology. The jaw is no longer a weapon. It is a cradle for the voice. It is no longer a clamp. It is a part of a smile. And deep within the bone, the cells are obeying the new order. The osteoblasts and osteoclasts, the microscopic architects of the skeleton, are reading the instructions sent by the soft diet and the shifting genes. They lay down less bone in the alveolar ridge, they shorten the ramus, they pull back the maxilla. But they leave that one small point, that triangle of bone at the symphysis, the fusion point of the jaw. It remains there, a silent witness to the revolution of cooking. Every time we eat a hot meal, every time we savor the texture of bread or cooked meat, we are participating in the ancient ritual that gave us our faces. We are the children of the hearth. Our chins are the legacy of the flame, a physical reminder that we survived not by the strength of our bite, but by the spark of our ingenuity. As the embers die down and the tribe settles into sleep, the firelight casts long shadows against the cave wall. The profiles of the sleepers are etched in silhouette. They are recognizable now. They are us. The heavy beast is gone, and in its place lies the dreaming human, defenseless save for the fire and the mind, and the strange, jutting bone that guards the gateway of the voice. The night is cold, but the future is warm, and the face of humanity has turned toward the light. The great wheel of the heavens turns, marking the passage of eons with the slow, indifferent precision of the stars. We are drifting further down the river of time, leaving behind the raw, sun-bleached intensity of the early Savannah and the first flickering hearths of the Homo erectus camps. We are entering the deep middle of human history, the Middle Pleistocene. It is a time of profound geological and biological ambiguity, a misty bridge between the archaic past and the modern future. The world is in flux. The ice sheets of the northern hemisphere pulsate like a slow, freezing heart, expanding to swallow continents and retreating to reveal new, verdant landscapes. The oceans rise and fall, drowning coastlines and exposing land bridges that serve as the highways of migration. In this shifting world, the human form is also restless. It is a clay that has not yet set. If you were to walk through the mist of a dawn 300,000 years ago, you would see faces that are familiar yet unsettlingly different. These are the faces of the transition, ancestors like Homo heidelbergensis, or the very earliest stirrings of Homo sapiens. They are creatures caught in the midst of a great biological metamorphosis, and the most dramatic theater of this change is the landscape of the face itself. For millions of years, the primate face was defined by the snout. It was a prow, a muzzle, a projection of bone that led the body into the world. When an ancestor entered a clearing, their mouth arrived first. The snout was the primary interface with reality, a tool for sensing, for breathing, for biting, for warning. It was a heavy horizontal structure, a prognathism that dominated the profile. It created a wide peripheral vision for the mouth itself. The ancestor could see their own lips, their own teeth, as a constant presence in the lower field of their sight. It was a face built on the axis of the horizontal, aligned with the spine of a quadruped, even long after we had stood upright. But now, a silent command has rippled through the genome. The tide is turning. The heavy, protruding muzzle of the distant past is receding, pulling back like the ocean leaving the shore after a storm. This is the great recession of the face. It is not a sudden collapse, but a glacial erosion, a subtle biological retraction that takes place over thousands of generations. It is as if the hand of nature is gently pressing against the front of the skull, flattening it, tucking the complex machinery of the mouth underneath the protective dome of the brain case. To understand this, we must visualize the skull not as a single solid block, but as a collection of shifting tectonic plates. The brain is expanding, ballooning upward and outward, demanding more room. As the neural globe, the housing of our growing consciousness, expands, it exerts a profound influence on the facial skeleton beneath it. The face is being rotated. It is being pulled downward and inward, tucking itself under the frontal lobes like a child hiding beneath the eaves of a roof. But there is more to this story than just the mechanics of space. There is a softening of the spirit that is rewriting the bone. We must consider the domestication syndrome. Look at the wolf and the dog. The wolf is sharp, elongated, possessed of a powerful, snapping muzzle. The dog is softer, its face shorter, its profile more vertical. This change in the dog was driven by a selection for tameness, for a lower threshold of aggression. As humans began to live in tighter, more complex social groups, relying on cooperation rather than brute dominance, the fires of aggression in our blood began to cool. The levels of testosterone and other androgens, the hormones that build heavy brows and massive jutting jaws, began to drop. We were domesticating ourselves. We were selecting for the calmest, the most cooperative, the most communicative among us, and the face followed the hormones. The survival of the friendliest was sculpting a new kind of visage. The massive, intimidating weaponry of the lower face was no longer a survival advantage. In fact, a softer, more open face may have signaled social trustworthiness. So, the face begins to shrink. The midface, the maxilla, the bone that holds the upper teeth and forms the floor of the nose, retracts significantly. It moves backward, seeking alignment with the eyes and the forehead. The cheeks lose their chaotic width. The nose becomes more prominent, not because it is growing, but because the face around it is falling away. The landscape is flattening. The orthognathic profile, the vertical face, is being born. But here, in the deep silence of our skeletal geometry, a strange and clumsy phenomenon occurs. It is an accident of engineering that will define us forever. The face does not retreat as a single unified unit. The upper jaw and the lower jaw are controlled by slightly different growth trajectories, different genetic instructions, and different mechanical constraints. The lower jaw, the mandible, is a complex bone. It is composed of two primary functional units: the alveolar process, which is the ridge of bone that holds the roots of the teeth, and the basal bone, which forms the dense structural rim of the jaw, the bottom edge that defines the jawline. As the teeth shrink due to our softer diets and the invention of cooking, the alveolar bone, the teeth holder, shrinks with them. It retreats rapidly, pulling back toward the throat to maintain the proper occlusion with the retracting upper jaw. The teeth are moving backward, seeking a new position closer to the joint of the jaw. However, the basal bone, the foundation, the bottom rim of the mandible, is stubborn. It does not retreat at the same speed. It is evolutionarily conservative, It holds its ground. Perhaps it is constrained by the need to maintain the width of the throat for breathing and swallowing. Perhaps it acts as a necessary anchor for the muscles that open the jaw, which have not shifted their attachment points as drastically. It is a moment of differential growth. The top of the jaw pulls back, but the bottom of the jaw stays put. Imagine a cliffside being eroded by the wind. The softer layers at the top are stripped away, blowing into the dust of history. But the hard granite at the base remains, jutting out into the air. This is exactly what happens to the human face. The alveolar bone recedes, leaving the basal bone sticking out. This creates a protrusion. It is a jutting point of bone at the symphysis, the midline where the two halves of the jaw fused in the womb. It is not a new bone added to the face, it is a leftover. It is a promontory of calcium stranded by the retreating waters of the face. This is the birth of the chin. In the language of evolutionary biology, this might be called a spandrel. The term comes from architecture, specifically the taper of the arches in great cathedrals like St. Mark's in Venice. Where two rounded arches meet a dome, a triangular space is formed between them. This space, the spandrel, is not designed for a specific purpose. It is a necessary byproduct of placing a round dome on square arches. It is a geometric inevitability. The human chin appears to be a biological spandrel. It was not designed in the traditional sense. Nature did not set out one day with the intention of creating a pointed knob on the end of the human jaw. There was no initial survival advantage to having a chin. It didn't help us chew. It didn't help us bite. It was simply the result of the upper face and the teeth shrinking faster than the bottom edge of the jaw could keep up. It is a lonely peak, revealing itself as the landscape transforms. It is a silent accident of geometry. Let us stand in the presence of an ancestor from this transitional time. Let us call him the Man of the Gap. He stands by a river in what is now Ethiopia. The sun is setting, casting long golden rays across the water. He dips a cupped hand to drink. As he leans forward, his reflection rises to meet him. The face in the water is a mosaic of the past and the future. The brow is still heavy, a shelf of bone shading the eyes. But the mouth is different. The heavy snout of the ape is gone. The face is flatter, and there, at the bottom of the visage, is a slight, bony prow. It is not the sharp, defined chin of a modern movie star, but it is there. A thickening, a protrusion. He runs a wet hand over his face. He feels the change, though he has no words for it. He feels the way the skin pulls tighter over the bone. The sensory experience of the face is shifting. Without the heavy muzzle, the center of gravity of the head has changed. The head balances more effortlessly atop the vertical column of the neck. The eyes are brought forward, binocular and focused. But this accident, this spandrel, is not merely a pile of waste rock. In nature, nothing remains useless for long. Evolution is a master scavenger. It finds uses for the leftovers. A structure that arises as a byproduct can be co-opted, repurposed, and polished into a vital adaptation. This is the concept of exaptation. The chin, born of a discrepancy in shrinking rates, begins to take on a life of its own. As the bone thickens at this stress point, it begins to serve a structural function. The human jaw is widening at the back to accommodate the throat and the brain, but shrinking at the front. This creates a wishbone shape that is mechanically vulnerable. When we bite down, even on our softer cooked food, the jaw wants to twist. It experiences wishboning forces, shear stresses that could fracture a thin, gracile bone. The chin, this accidental protrusion, becomes a buttress. It adds mass exactly where it is needed, at the fusion point. It acts like the keel of a ship, stiffening the jaw against the torsion of chewing. The spandrel becomes a shield. The accident becomes a fortress. Furthermore, as the man of the gap opens his mouth to call out to his kin, a sound that is more complex, more modulated than the hoots of the past, the chin plays a new role. The muscles of the tongue, the genioglossus, attach to the inside of this mental eminence. As the face has flattened, the tongue has been squeezed into a smaller space. It is now a vertical organ as much as a horizontal one, capable of the acrobatics required for speech. The chin provides the anchor. It holds the floor of the mouth steady. It creates the architectural space for the tongue to rest and to recoil. The accidental shelf of bone becomes the platform for the human voice. Without this recession of the face and the subsequent emergence of the chin, our throats might have remained too crowded for the symphony of language that was about to erupt. Night falls on the Pleistocene. The air grows cold, and the man of the gap returns to the warmth of the fire. The shadows dance on the rock walls, mimicking the flickering nature of existence. He looks at his children, sleeping in a heap of furs. Their faces are softer than his. Their chins are slightly more defined. The tide is still going out. The Great Recession is a multi-millennial process, a slow sculpting by the invisible hands of diet, hormones, and geometry. It is a story of subtraction. We are being whittled down. We are losing the heavy mask of the warrior and gaining the open face of the thinker. It is a profound thought to hold in the quiet of the night, that one of our most defining features, the thing that artists draw to show determination, the thing we rub when we are deep in thought, began as a mismatch. It began because one part of us let go of the past faster than another. The teeth surrendered to the new world of soft food, but the chin held on to the memory of the old heavy bone. And in that lag, in that hesitation between the retreating alveolar bone and the stubborn basal bone, our humanity found its profile. We are a species of vestiges and accidents, cobbled together from the parts that worked. The chin is a monument to this messy, beautiful process. It is the shoreline left behind when the ocean of the snout retreated. It is the signature of our shrinking aggression and our growing minds. As the fire burns low, the silence of the cave is filled with the soft breathing of the tribe. The wind howls outside, carrying the scent of rain and the distant trumpeting of mammoths. But inside, the evolution of the face continues its silent work. The bone remodels itself in the dark. The spandrel hardens. The chin waits for the dawn, ready to meet the future not as a mistake, but as the prow of a new kind of vessel, sailing into the uncharted waters of the cognitive revolution. And so, the face of the earth changes, and the face of the human changes with it. We are becoming vertical. We are becoming gracile. We are becoming the people of the chin, the ones who will inherit the earth not by the strength of our jaws, but by the words we will speak from the cradle of bone that nature accidentally built for us. Generations fade into dust, yet the trait remains, polished by the passage of time, waiting to be discovered by the mirrors of a distant, polished age. The wind howls across the tundra, a lonely, hollow sound that has echoed over the northern hemisphere for 10,000 years. We are standing at the mouth of a shelter, a shallow overhang of limestone carved by ancient waters, looking out into the gray twilight of the late Pleistocene. The great ice sheets are groaning in the distance, their massive weight pressing down upon the continents. But here, in this small pocket of survival, there is life. A fire burns low, casting dancing shadows against the rock, illuminating the faces of a family huddled together for warmth. Look closely at them. They are us. These are the anatomically modern humans, the Homo sapiens who have wandered out of Africa, crossed the Levant, and are now facing the biting chill of the Eurasian steppe. Their faces are distinct from the archaic titans who walked before them. Gone are the heavy, overarching brow ridges that shaded the eyes of Homo erectus. Gone is the projecting muzzle-like snout of the Australopithecines. The face has retracted, pulled back under the high, rounded dome of the skull. It is a face of vertical planes, of high foreheads and delicate cheekbones. It is a face of profound beauty, open and expressive, capable of 1,000 subtle shifts of emotion. But beauty comes at a cost. In the ruthless economy of evolution, every refinement carries a hidden price, a debt that must be paid in the currency of physics. As the heavy bone of the ancestors melted away, shedding the weight of the past to allow for a lighter, more agile head, the human face became structurally fragile. We became gracile. Our bones thinned. The massive pillars of calcium that once channeled the forces of chewing directly into the skull dissolved. And in this architectural lightening, a crisis arose, not of predators or cold, but of engineering. We must descend now into the microscopic world, into the invisible architecture of the jaw itself, to understand the silent war being fought every time these ancestors sat down to eat. Consider the mandible. It is the only moving bone in the skull, a hinged lever of incredible importance. In our distant past, among the great apes and the early hominids, this bone was a solid block, a fortress of density. It had to be. The diet of the past, tough, raw vegetation, fibrous stalks, uncooked meat, demanded a bite force that could crush stone. To support this, the jaw was reinforced on the inside. Run your tongue behind your lower front teeth. In a chimpanzee or a Neanderthal, you would feel a shelf of bone there, a simian shelf, a thick inward-facing buttress that locked the two halves of the jaw together. But as our faces shrank, driven by the invention of cooking and the need for speech, there was no longer room for this internal shelf. The tongue, growing more acrobatic and essential for the complex dance of language, needed space. It pushed against the back of the teeth. The throat opened up. The internal buttress receded, leaving the floor of the mouth open for the tongue to rest. The jaw became thinner, lighter, more elegant. And here lies the danger. The human jaw is shaped like a horseshoe, or more ominously, like a wishbone. We are all familiar with the wishbone from a bird, a delicate V-shaped structure. We know how easily it snaps when pulled apart. This is the precise structural vulnerability introduced by the shortening of the human face. Imagine a hunter in the firelight. He is holding a strip of dried meat, perhaps bison or reindeer, smoked over pine needles to preserve it for the winter. It is tough, leather-like. He places it between his molars, on the left side of his mouth, and bites down. In this moment, a storm of physics is unleashed. The heavy muscles on the side of his head, the masseters, contract with violent force. They pull the jaw upward. But because he is biting on only one side, the forces are not symmetrical. The jaw is subjected to torsion, a twisting motion. Simultaneously, and more dangerously, it is subjected to lateral transverse bending. Picture the wishbone again. When you squeeze the ends of the wishbone together, the point, the chin area, is under immense tension. But when you pull them apart, the point is under compression. In the human jaw, the act of chewing on one side causes the entire bone to warp. The two sides of the mandible want to squeeze together at the back and splay apart at the front. The bone twists, it bows, it shivers under the strain. Without reinforcement, this gracile modern jaw would eventually fail. The stress would concentrate at the weakest point, the midline, the symphysis, the place where the left and right halves of the mandible fused in the womb. Over a lifetime of chewing tough, dried meats and fibrous roots, the repeated bending would cause microfractures. The bone would fatigue. Eventually, it would snap, a catastrophic failure of the feeding mechanism that would mean death in the unforgiving wild. But nature is the master engineer. It does not allow a species to walk into a dead end without attempting a solution. It cannot go back. It cannot return to the heavy, blocky muzzle of the ape. For the path to humanity is paved with a lighter face and a speaking tongue. So it finds a solution not in bulk, but in geometry. It innovates. Deep within the genetic code, a subtle instruction is written. It is a directive to the osteoblasts, the tiny mason cells that build our skeleton. Do not build inward, the code whispers, for the tongue needs that room. Build outward. And so, as the teeth retracted and the alveolar bone shrank back, the base of the jaw held firm. More than that, it thickened. It began to pile layer upon microscopic layer of calcium at the very point of maximum stress. It built a prominence, a triangular pyramid of bone at the center of the chin. This is the silent buttress. It is not a decorative feature. It is a girder. Think of the chin as the keel of a ship. A ship without a keel is vulnerable to the rolling waves. It is unstable, prone to capsizing. The keel provides the longitudinal strength, the spine that holds the hull together against the crushing weight of the ocean. The chin performs this exact function for the face. As the hunter bites down on his dried meat, the forces race through the bone, seeking a weak point. They converge on the midline. But instead of finding a thin, fragile connection, they encounter the mental eminence, the chin. The thickened bone acts as a shock absorber and a distributor of force. It resists the bending. When the jaw wants to squeeze together or twist apart, the extra mass of the chin acts as a counterforce, stiffening the entire arch. It is a marvel of biomechanical efficiency. By adding a relatively small amount of bone to the front of the jaw, nature significantly increased the structural integrity of the entire system. It allowed us to keep our small vertical faces, our complex throats, and our agile tongues, while still retaining the ability to process the foods of the wild. Let us watch this adaptation in action during a day in the life of the Pleistocene. The sun has not yet risen, and the air is blue with cold. The hunter wakes. His breath plumes in the freezing air. He is hungry. The tribe has brought down a woolly rhino days ago, but the meat is frozen solid. He takes a chunk of the fat and muscle, hard as wood in the frost. He puts it in his mouth. The cold shocks his teeth. He begins to chew. It is a slow, rhythmic grinding. To thaw the meat and break down the fibers requires repetitive, sustained force. If we could see through his skin, we would see the mandible flexing. Bone is not dead stone. It is a living, flexible lattice. It bends slightly under load. With every bite, the wishbone of his jaw distorts. But the chin holds the line. It is the silent partner in this breakfast. It takes the punishment. It dissipates the energy that would otherwise shear the bone apart. As he eats, he looks at his daughter. She is young, her features still soft. Her chin is less pronounced than his, for the chin is a feature that grows with age, emerging fully only as puberty triggers the final growth spurts of the face. It is a trait that matures as the demands on the jaw increase. In her, the promise of the buttress is waiting. As she grows, as she begins to chew the harder foods of adulthood, her chin will sharpen, the bone thickening in response to the stress, preparing her for a lifetime of survival. This evolution was not a straight line. It was a chaotic, stumbling journey through the dark. There were likely populations of early humans who had faces too gracile, jaws too weak, who suffered from fractures and failures. The fossil record is a library of experiments, many of which ended in silence. But the lineage that led to us, the lineage of the chin, found the perfect balance. We are the survivors of the structural compromise. We can look at the chin as a spandrel that was co-opted. Perhaps it began simply because the teeth shrank faster than the jawbone, leaving a stump. But once that stump existed, natural selection seized upon it. This is useful, the blind watchmaker concluded. This shape resists the bend. And so, those with the most reinforced symphysis, the most prominent chins, suffered fewer broken jaws. They ate better. They survived longer. They passed on the genes for this peculiar jutting point. It is a duality of adaptation and cost. We sacrificed the raw, crushing power of the chimpanzee. We can no longer crack palm nuts with our teeth. We can no longer tear the throat out of a gazelle. We are in many ways weaker, but in that weakness, we found a different kind of strength. The chin allowed us to maintain the delicate machinery of speech. Imagine the silence of the forest if we had retained the internal simian shelf of the apes. The tongue would be trapped. The complex vowels and sharp consonants of human language might never have evolved. We might still be communicating in hoots and grunts, limited by the architecture of our own mouths. The chin, by moving the reinforcement to the outside, liberated the voice. So, the chin is not just a shield, it is a permission slip. It is the structural permit that allowed us to become storytellers. Walk with the hunter now as he leaves the cave. The snow crunches under his boots of wrapped hide. He scans the horizon. The wind bites at his face, but he does not cover his mouth. His jaw is set. That phrase, jaw set, implies determination, a locking of the will. Anatomically, it is the masseters tightening, the teeth clenching, and the chin jutting forward. It is the stance of a creature ready to face the world. In the distance, he sees the dark shape of a predator, perhaps a cave lion moving through the scrub. He freezes. His hand tightens on his spear. His teeth clench involuntarily. The stress on his jaw is immense, even without food, simply from the tension of the muscles preparing for action. The chin stabilizes the arch. It is the anchor in the storm of adrenaline. As the eons pass, the ice will melt. The great herds will vanish. The hunter will become the farmer, eating soft gruels and baked breads. The chewing stresses will decrease further, and our jaws will continue to shrink, leading to the crowded teeth of the modern era. But the chin will remain. It has become a permanent fixture, a vestige of the time when we needed a girder to keep our faces from breaking. It is a memory carved in bone. Every time you speak, every time you chew a piece of steak, every time you grit your teeth in frustration, you are using this ancient technology. You are relying on the silent buttress that saved your ancestors from the fragility of their own evolution. Stand before a mirror in the quiet of your own room. Trace the line of your jaw from the ear down to the point of the chin. Feel the bone. It feels solid, permanent. But remember that it is the result of a dynamic, fluid process that took millions of years. It is a compromise between the shrinking beast and the growing human. You are looking at a piece of architectural genius. You are looking at the keel of the ship that carried your genetic lineage through the storms of the Pleistocene. The rest of the body changed. We lost our fur. We stood upright. Our brains tripled in size, but the chin stepped forward to hold the face together. It is a solitary feature. No other primate has it. A chimp has a receding jaw. A Gibson has a sloping face. Even our cousins, the Neanderthals, despite their immense strength, lacked a true projecting chin. They relied on the sheer thickness of their bones. We, the fragile ones, the slender ones, the ones with the high foreheads and the storytelling tongues, we alone possess this silent buttress. It is a badge of our specific history. It speaks of a time when we walked the razor's edge between being too weak to survive and being too heavy to fly. We needed to be light enough to think, to speak, to run, but strong enough to eat the world. The chin was the answer. And so, the chapter of the silent buttress closes, but the structure remains. It holds firm against the tides of time, a small, triangular promise that we can endure the pressures of existence, that we can adapt, and that even in our fragility, we can find a way to be unbreakable. The wind continues to howl across the tundra, burying the bones of the past, but the legacy of the chin lives on in the living, breathing, speaking face of humanity. The sun dips below the jagged horizon of the Great Rift Valley, painting the sky in bruises of violet and charcoal. The wind, ancient and unceasing, moves through the acacia thorns, creating a low, mournful whistle that has been the soundtrack of this continent for millions of years. Listen closely to the soundscape of this deep past. For eons, the air has been filled with the chirping of crickets, the coughing roar of the leopard, the trumpeting of the elephant, and the chaotic, screeching pant hoots of the primate troop. These are the sounds of urgency, of immediate emotion, fear, anger, hunger, lust. They are signals broadcast into the ether, meant to trigger a reaction, to warn or to woo. They are the raw, unpolished noises of survival. But as we move forward through the mists of the Pleistocene, a new sound begins to weave itself into this tapestry. It is a sound of unprecedented complexity, a vibration that carries not just emotion, but information, memory, and imagination. It is the human voice. It starts as a hum, a rhythm, a cadence that mimics the beating heart or the walking footstep. Then it sharpens. It breaks into discrete units of meaning, syllables, consonants, vowels. It becomes a word, and then a sentence, and finally, a story. We are entering the era of the cradle of the tongue. We are witnessing the birth of the only animal on Earth that can shape its breath into a cathedral of ideas. But this revolution, this shift from the guttural call to the Shakespearean sonnet, is not merely a change in the brain. It is a profound reconstruction of the body. It is an engineering project that required the complete remodeling of the throat, the mouth, and the jaw. And at the center of this architectural upheaval stands our silent protagonist, the chin. To understand the chin's role in this symphony, we must first look at the instrument itself, the tongue. In the modern world, we take this organ for granted, using it to taste our coffee or absent-mindedly wet our lips. But biologically, the tongue is a marvel of nature, a muscular hydrostat, similar in design to the trunk of an elephant or the tentacle of an octopus. It has no internal skeleton, no bone to stiffen it. It is pure muscle, a bundle of 8 distinct muscle groups interlaced in a complex three-dimensional weave. It is capable of moving in any direction, of lengthening, shortening, curling, and flattening. It is a creature of water and protein, possessed of an incredible fluid dexterity. In our ape ancestors, the tongue was primarily a tool for moving food. It was a piston, pushing chewed vegetation down the throat. It sat flat and long in a mouth that was shaped like a tunnel. But as the human face began to retract, shrinking back under the brain case, the oral cavity changed shape. It became shorter and rounder. The snout disappeared. This presented a significant spatial problem. The tongue, which had not shrunk as much as the jaw, suddenly found itself in a crowded room. It was like a large animal trapped in a small cage. Simultaneously, the demands on the tongue were shifting. It was no longer just a food mover, it was becoming a sound shaper. To produce the rapid-fire articulation of human speech, the precise clicks of a T, the rolling trill of an R, the soft hiss of an S, the tongue needed to perform acrobatic feats of speed and precision. It had to touch the roof of the mouth, the back of the teeth, and the soft palate, all within milliseconds, without tiring. To do this, the tongue needed an anchor. A muscle cannot work in a vacuum. It needs a firm attachment point against which it can pull. Imagine a ship trying to dock in a storm. It needs a bollard, a strong post of iron driven deep into the concrete of the pier. Without that anchor, the ropes would snap and the ship would drift. The tongue is the ship and the chin is the bollard. Deep inside the curve of the human jaw, behind the point of the chin, lie small bony spikes known as the genial tubercles or mental spines. These are the attachment points for the genioglossus muscle, the fan-shaped muscle that forms the bulk of the tongue. In modern humans, these spines are prominent, reinforced ridges of bone. In our archaic ancestors, they were often absent or much smaller. As the need for speech grew, the tension on this attachment point increased. The tongue, dancing with the breath, pulled and tugged at the back of the jaw thousands of times a day. Nature responds to stress. Just as a callus forms on a worker's hand, bone thickens where muscles pull. The emergence of the chin, the thickening of the anterior mandible, may well be the skeletal response to the relentless activity of the speaking tongue. The chin is the external buttress that supports the internal anchor. It provides the necessary mass to withstand the constant tug-of-war of language. Let us step into a scene from 50,000 years ago to a campsite nestled in the limestone cliffs of the Dordogne. The air smells of wet limestone, pine resin, and the metallic tang of butchered meat. A fire crackles, its sparks rising to join the vast, indifferent stars. An elder sits on a fur skin, surrounded by the younger members of the tribe. He is not the strongest hunter, his hair is gray, and his joints ache with the damp. But he holds a power that is new to this earth. He holds the power of the narrative. Watch his face as he speaks. He is telling the story of the great hunt, of the time the mammoth fell into the ravine. It is a story of survival, a lesson passed down to ensure the next generation lives. His mouth is a flurry of motion. His lips purse and spread. His jaw rises and falls. Inside the dark theater of his mouth, his tongue is executing a frantic, precise ballet. It darts forward to tap the back of his upper teeth for a D sound, then recoils instantly to the back of the throat for a K, then flattens for an Ah. Every one of these movements exerts a force on his jaw. When he shouts to emphasize the mammoth's roar, the genioglossus muscle contracts violently, pulling forward on the mandible. Without the reinforced arch of the chin, this constant stress, combined with the structural weakness of the wishbone-shaped jaw, might cause the bone to warp or fatigue over a lifetime. The chin holds the line. It stabilizes the floor of the mouth, ensuring that the tongue has a rigid platform from which to launch its sounds. As the elder speaks, we witness another profound change in the human anatomy, the descent of the larynx. In most mammals, the voice box sits high in the throat, allowing the animal to breathe and swallow at the same time. It is a safe design, preventing choking. A dog can lap water and breathe simultaneously. A human cannot. We have traded safety for song. Over thousands of generations, the human larynx has slid down the throat, creating a large resonant chamber called the pharynx above the vocal cords. This descended larynx acts like the body of a cello, amplifying and modifying the sounds produced by the vocal cords. It allows us to produce the vowels, A, E, I, O, U, that give our language its musicality and clarity. But this new open throat created a vertical column of space behind the mouth. The tongue, anchored at the front, now forms the front wall of this vertical throat. This geometric shift placed even more importance on the anterior mandible, the front of the jaw. As the throat opened downward, the jaw had to provide the forward boundary. The chin, jutting out, helps to hold the airway open. It pulls the tongue and the hyoid bone forward, preventing the soft tissues from collapsing backward and suffocating us, especially during sleep. In this sense, the chin is a guardian of the breath. It keeps the gateway to the lungs clear, holding the heavy curtain of the tongue away from the windpipe. Pause to consider the evolutionary duality of this arrangement. We are a species that risks death every time we eat. Because our larynx is low, a piece of meat can easily slip into the airway, silencing the voice forever. Choking is a uniquely human hazard. We live on the razor's edge between sustenance and suffocation. Yet, the evolutionary payout was worth the risk. The ability to communicate complex thought, to say, "Meet me by the river when the moon is full," rather than just shrieking in alarm, allowed us to coordinate, to plan, to bond. The chin facilitated this gamble. By reinforcing the jaw and providing a sturdy cradle for the tongue, it allowed us to maximize the potential of our risky, descended voice box. It is the structural compromise that makes the spoken word possible. Let us return to the campfire. The elder's story is finishing. The children are wide-eyed, their minds filled with images of beasts they have never seen, painted there by the vibrations of the old man's throat. This is the social glue of the species. Language is the bond that holds the tribe together closer than blood. It allows for gossip, which is the mechanism of trust and reputation. It allows for law. It allows for religion. And all of it rests on the bone. The jaw of the elder, with its prominent bearded chin, is the physical instrument of this culture. Compare him to his distant cousin, the Neanderthal, living perhaps in the next valley over. The Neanderthal is powerful, intelligent, a survivor of the ice. He speaks, certainly. He has a hyoid bone similar to ours. He has the FOXP2 gene for language, but his face is different. He lacks a chin. His jaw slopes backward. His tongue sits in a longer, flatter oral cavity. Perhaps his speech is different too, higher pitched maybe, or more nasal, less articulate in the rapid-fire consonants that require the sharp, stabilized movements of the tongue tip. The Neanderthal voice might be a powerful instrument, but perhaps it lacks the precise staccato articulation that the chin-supported tongue of Homo sapiens can achieve. Some anthropologists wonder if this subtle difference in vocal efficiency gave us a slight edge, a clearer communication in the chaos of the hunt, a more hypnotic storytelling ability in the quiet of the cave. Did the chin help us out-talk our cousins? The night deepens. The fire burns down to embers, glowing like the eyes of dying beasts. The tribe settles down to sleep. The silence of the prehistoric world returns, but it is a different silence now. It is a silence pregnant with the potential for speech. Even in sleep, the bodies of these ancestors are working. As they dream, their breathing remains steady. The chin, jutting forward, pulls the genioglossus muscle taut, keeping the heavy tongue from falling back and blocking the air. The silent buttress becomes the silent sentinel, guarding the sleeper's breath through the long hours of the night. Imagine the sensory detail of a mother humming a lullaby to her infant in this darkness. The hum starts in the chest, vibrating the ribs. It travels up the throat, resonating in the pharynx. The tongue presses against the roof of the mouth, modulating the pitch. The jaw is relaxed but stable. She feels the vibration in her own chin, a buzzing resonance in the bone. The baby, pressed against her, feels it too. This transmission of sound, from bone to bone, is the first language we ever learn. It is a language of comfort, anchored in the anatomy of the face. The chin, then, is not merely a piece of skeletal geometry. It is the stage upon which the drama of human connection is enacted. It is the cradle of the tongue. Without it, the tongue would be an unmoored ship, flailing in a receding sea. With it, the tongue becomes a pen, writing our history on the air. As the millennia pass, the languages will multiply. They will become the clicks of the Khoisan, the tonal songs of the Mandarin, the rolling rhythms of the Romance tongues. Towers of Babel will rise and fall. Libraries will be written and burned. But beneath every spoken syllable, beneath every shouted order and whispered prayer, the chin remains. It is the unsung hero of our loquaciousness. It is a silent error in the code of life, a differential growth rate between the alveolar bone and the basal bone that was seized upon by destiny. Nature saw the protrusion and said, "Here, anchor the voice here." And so a mistake became a microphone. A leftover became a lecture hall. In the quiet of your own life, when you speak to a loved one or when you talk to yourself in the mirror, feel the movement of your jaw. Feel the subtle tension in the point of your chin. That is the feeling of deep time working within you. That is the sensation of 1,000,000 years of evolution pulling against the bone, striving to turn breath into meaning. The wind outside the cave dies down, leaving only the sound of the tribe's breathing. The world waits for the sun and for the next story to be told. The biological imperative has shifted. We are no longer just eaters. We are speakers. We have traded the biting muzzle for the speaking chin. We have lost the power to crush bone with our mouths, but we have gained the power to crush mountains with our words. And deep in the marrow of the mandible, the memory of that trade is written. The chin is the receipt for the purchase of our voice. It stands as a bony monument to the moment we decided that what we had to say was more important than what we had to eat. We drift away from the sleeping camp, rising above the limestone cliffs, looking down at the small flicker of firelight in the vast, dark wilderness. The sounds of the night are reclaiming the valley, the owl, the cricket, the wind. But we know that when the sun rises, the human voice will join the chorus again, stronger and clearer than before, anchored firmly in the cradle of the chin. The silence of the primeval forest has been broken forever, shattered not by the roar of a predator, but by the articulate, chin-supported whisper of a human being saying, "I am here." The mist of the late Pleistocene hangs heavy over the valley, a shroud of gray vapor that clings to the skin and muffles the world. We are standing in the twilight of the Stone Age, a time when the great lumbering beasts of the ice are beginning to fade into memory, and the human drama is shifting from a story of solitary survival to one of intricate connection. The wind moves through the canopy of an ancient temperate forest, stirring the leaves of the oak and the elm, carrying with it the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the faint, sweet aroma of wood smoke. Follow the smoke. It winds its way through the trees like a ghost, leading us to a clearing where a collection of shelters stands against the darkening sky. These are not the rough, temporary camps of the early wanderers. They are settlements, places of return, places of belonging. Around the central fire, a group of humans is gathered. But look closely at them. Look past the furs they wear and the tools they hold. Look at their faces. Something has changed. The raw, jagged intensity of the deep past has softened. The faces illuminated by the dancing flames are smoother, flatter, more open. The heavy, beetling brow ridges that once sat like granite lintels over the eyes of their ancestors are gone, replaced by smooth, high foreheads. The jutting, weaponized muzzles that signaled a capacity for sudden, brutal violence have retracted. In their place is a vertical profile, a face that invites engagement rather than signaling dominance. And at the bottom of this new, gentler visage, defining the lower edge of the silhouette against the firelight, is the chin. To understand why this bony prominence exists, we must understand the invisible war that was fought not on the battlefield, but within the blood and the brain of our species. We must explore the theory of the softening of the warrior. For millions of years, the logic of the primate world was dictated by a harsh and unforgiving calculus. Might makes right. In the hierarchy of the great apes, and indeed in the social structures of our own distant ancestors, status was often determined by physical intimidation. The alpha, the dominant male, was a creature of testosterone. His body was a testament to the power of androgenic hormones. He possessed a massive skeleton, thick bones, large canine teeth, and a face built for aggression. The heavy brow ridge was a signal, a billboard of dominance that made his stare more penetrating, more terrifying. The protruding jaw was a weapon, ready to bite, to crush, to maim. This was the heavy mask of the warrior. It was a face designed to say, "Stay back." It was a biological, "Do not disturb" sign, backed up by the muscle and bone to enforce it. In a world of sparse resources and constant threat, this aggression was a survival strategy. It ensured access to food, to mates, to the safest sleeping sites. But then, the rules of the game changed. As our ancestors moved into more complex environments, as the reliance on tools and fire grew, and most importantly, as the need for collective child rearing and group hunting increased, the alpha strategy began to fail. A single tyrant could not bring down a mammoth. A solitary bully could not protect a vulnerable infant that took nearly 2 decades to mature. Survival began to depend not on how hard you could hit, but on how well you could help. A silent revolution began, a process that biologists call self-domestication. It is a theory that speaks to the very soul of our species. It suggests that we did not just tame the wolf into the dog, or the aurochs into the cow. We tamed ourselves. Imagine the social dynamics of a tribe 50,000 years ago. There is a man in the group who is a throwback to the old ways. He is reactive, aggressive, quick to anger. He hoards food. He uses his strength to intimidate. In the deep past, he might have been king. But here, in this web of interdependence, he is a liability. The others, the calmer ones, the cooperators, the ones who share, begin to shun him. He finds himself on the periphery. He does not get the best share of the meat. He does not find a willing mate. His lineage and the genes that drive his high testosterone aggression begins to fade. Generation after generation, the reactive aggression is weeded out. We began to select for tolerance. We chose mates who were kind, who were patient, who could sit by a fire for hours without starting a fight. We selected for a lower threshold of fear and a higher capacity for social bonding. This behavioral shift, this choice to be nice, had profound physiological consequences. It triggered a cascade of changes in our biology, a phenomenon known as the domestication syndrome. When a species is selected for tameness, for a reduction in the fight-or-flight adrenal response, the chemistry of the body changes. The levels of circulating testosterone and stress hormones drop. And because the body is a unified system, this chemical ebb tide reshaped the bone. The heavy features of the face are built by testosterone. The brow ridge, the width of the cheekbones, the size of the teeth, the protrusion of the jaw. These are all androgen-dependent structures. As we became gentler, our hormone levels dropped, and the heavy architecture of aggression began to dissolve. The face reduced. It became feminized. This is not a comment on gender, but on the biological reality that the robust, hypermasculine features of the archaic past were smoothed away in both men and women. The brow ridge melted into the forehead. The midface retracted. The teeth shrank. We were becoming gracile, lighter, softer, more delicate. This process is also linked to neoteny, the retention of juvenile traits into adulthood. Look at a baby chimpanzee. It has a flat face, a high forehead, and a small jaw. It is cute. It elicits care. As it grows, it transforms into the prognathic, heavy-browed adult. Humans, however, stopped growing up. In a biological sense, we are eternal children. We keep the flat face, the curiosity, the playfulness, and the plasticity of the infant primate throughout our entire lives. And here, in this landscape of biological quieting, lies the paradox. If the entire face was shrinking, if the jaw was receding and the bone was thinning to match our newfound peacefulness, why does the chin exist? Why, when the rest of the muzzle was retreating towards the throat, did this one point of bone stand firm? It is the great irony of our anatomy. The chin is the only part of the face that projects more in modern humans than in our robust ancestors. Picture the retreating tide. The ocean of the face is pulling back. The waves of the maxilla, the upper jaw, and the alveolar bone, the teeth holder, are receding. But the chin acts like a rocky promontory that refuses to erode. It is left behind, jutting out into the world. In this context, the chin is a lag. It is a piece of the old skeletal geometry that didn't get the memo to retreat. But it is also something more. It is a symbol of the differential rates of our transformation. The teeth shrank faster than the jawbone. The aggression, represented by the teeth and the biting apparatus, faded more quickly than the structural foundation of the face. So, the chin remains as the softening of the warrior. It is the signature of a species that tamed itself. It marks the precise point where the weaponized mouth of the beast stopped and the vertical face of the thinker began. Let us return to the campfire and observe a day in the life of these self-domesticated humans. The sun rises over a landscape that is no longer a battleground of constant fear. The group wakes. There is a calmness in their interactions. A man accidentally bumps into another while reaching for a water skin. In the archaic past, among the Homo erectus troops, such an intrusion might have been met with a bare-toothed snarl or a swift blow. Here, there is a murmur of apology, a nod, perhaps a smile. The smile itself is a revolutionary act. In the animal kingdom, baring teeth is a threat, but in the human lineage, the pulling back of the lips has been repurposed into a signal of appeasement and joy, and the chin frames this smile. When the lips part, the mental eminence, the chin, provides the lower bracket of the expression. It gives weight and definition to the signal. Later in the day, the group engages in a collaborative hunt. They are tracking a reindeer herd. They do not rely on the explosive, solitary power of the leopard. They rely on coordination. They use hand signals. They whisper. They share the burden of the chase. This cooperation requires a suppression of the ego. The hunter who makes the kill does not hoard the meat. He shares it. This suppression of the self in favor of the group is the hallmark of self-domestication, and as they eat, sitting in a circle, their faces tell the story of this change. They are chewing cooked meat, softer food that puts less strain on the jaw. Their smaller, retracted faces allow them to look each other in the eye while eating. The snout of the wolf blocks the lower field of vision. The flat face of the human opens up the visual field for social connection. We can watch each other eat. We can read the micro-expressions of our neighbors. The chin stands as the physical residue of this peace. It is a bony peace treaty signed between our biology and our social evolution. Think of the chin as a boundary stone. It marks the limit of our aggression. The long, snapping jaws of the past, jaws designed to tear and crush in a world of violence, have been put away. We have disarmed our faces. We have traded the heavy armor of the brow and the muzzle for the vulnerability of the open face. But vulnerability is its own kind of strength. By losing the heavy bones of defense, we gained the sensitivity of connection. Our skin is thinner. We blush, a visibly honest signal of embarrassment or arousal that is impossible through the dark fur of a chimp. Our eyes have whites, the sclera, that clearly show where we are looking, inviting others to follow our gaze, and our chin defines the jawline without threatening to bite. There is a profound beauty in this idea. When you look in the mirror and see your chin, you are looking at the evidence of your ancestors' kindness. You are seeing the result of thousands of generations of people who chose to work together rather than fight. You are seeing the outcome of a lineage that decided that the warrior way, the way of the alpha, the bully, the tyrant, was a dead end. The chin is the monument to the beta. It is the trophy of the cooperative. It belongs to the lineage of the storytellers, the nurses, the teachers, and the friends. The heavy-jawed, no-chinned ancestors, the Neanderthals, the Denisovans, the robust Australopithecines, were magnificent in their own way. They were survivors, but they are gone. We, the people of the gracile face and the jutting chin, are still here. As the evening settles in and the stars wheel overhead, the tribe engages in the most human of activities: grooming. Fingers run through hair, picking out burrs and lice. It is a calming ritual, one that releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. A woman rests her chin on her knees as she is groomed. The firelight catches the ridge of the bone. That small triangle of calcium is a lighthouse in the dark of deep time. It signals a shift in the very purpose of the head. The head is no longer primarily a weapon mount. It is a communication center. The retreat of the face has brought the eyes, the ears, and the mouth into a tight, vertical alignment, perfect for the intimate exchange of information. The testosterone that once flooded the veins, building walls of bone and fueling fires of rage, has receded into a manageable stream. It is still there, of course, we are not angels, but it no longer dictates the shape of our skulls. The biological quieting has done its work. Consider the evolutionary duality here. By losing the massive jaw and the heavy brow, we became physically more vulnerable. A punch to the modern human face can break bones easily. We have no snout to absorb the impact. Our eyes are exposed. Our jaws are fragile wishbones. We are soft targets. But this physical fragility forced us to lean even harder on our greatest adaptation, each other. Because we could no longer survive alone, because we had softened, we had to weave the tightest social safety nets in the animal kingdom. Our weakness became our greatest strength. The chin is the seal on that contract. It says, "I cannot fight the world alone. I need you." The night deepens. The sounds of the forest, the screech of an owl, the snap of a twig, are reminders of the wild world that still surrounds this bubble of domesticity. But inside the circle of the fire, there is a different law. It is the law of the self-tamed. Generations will fade into dust. The climate will shift. The ice will melt, and the forests will turn to deserts and back again. But through all these vicissitudes, the human face will keep its new shape. The brow will remain smooth, the teeth will remain small, and the chin will remain firm. It stands there jutting out, a stubborn refusal to fully retreat. It is a spandrel, yes, a geometric accident of a shrinking jaw. But it is also a poem written in bone. It tells the story of how we laid down the heavy mask of the ancestors and revealed the human face beneath. It tells the story of how the warrior softened, and in doing so, conquered the world, not with teeth, but with trust. So, the next time you rest your chin in your hand, deep in thought, remember that you are holding a piece of history. You are holding the physical manifestation of the moment we chose peace. You are holding the silent, bony residue of the love that saved our species. The fog rolls down from the great ice sheets of the north, a heavy weeping blanket that smothers the ancient forests of the Danube Valley. It is a world of gray and green, of silence and dripping water. We are standing in the deep midwinter of the Upper Paleolithic, roughly 40,000 years ago. The air tastes of wet limestone, decaying pine needles, and the metallic tang of impending snow. This is the edge of the known world, a frontier where the map is blank and the territories are claimed only by the footprints of the mammoth and the cave lion. Here, in this mist-shrouded cathedral of trees, a momentous event is about to take place. It is a meeting of ghosts and future ghosts, a collision of two distinct lineages of humanity. Through the veil of the fog, dark shapes emerge. They move with a quiet, rolling gait, their feet wrapped in heavy hides, their breath pluming in the freezing air. They are the Neanderthals, the indigenous masters of this frozen continent. They are powerful, thick-boned and resilient, their bodies shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary pressure to withstand the cold. They are the old ones, the keepers of the ice. And coming up from the riverbank, shivering in the damp chill, is another band. They are taller, leaner. their limbs longer and more gracile. They are the newcomers, the Homo sapiens, the wanderers who have followed the sun out of Africa and into the gray heart of Europe. They carry with them new tools, new ornaments, and a new look. Freeze this moment. Let the camera of your mind pan slowly across the faces of these two groups as they stand across the clearing from one another, separated by 20 paces of moss and fear. The Neanderthals gaze upon the strangers. They see eyes that are familiar, hands that are familiar, but a facial architecture that is startlingly alien. The Neanderthal face is a marvel of aerodynamic solidity. The center of the face is pulled forward, the nose immense and projecting to warm the Arctic air. Above the eyes, the brow ridge is a continuous bar of bone, a visor of strength. But below the mouth, the face retreats. The jaw is massive, yes, capable of immense bite force, but it slopes backward. There is no point. There is no prow. The chin is absent, the mandible curving gently toward the thick muscular neck. Now, look at the sapiens, the newcomers. Their faces are flat, tucked under high vertical foreheads, and at the bottom of their visages, there is a sharp, defined point. The bone juts forward, catching the diffuse light of the cloudy sky. It defines the jawline, creating a sharp angle between the face and the neck. To the Neanderthals, this must have been a feature of intense fascination and perhaps uncanny strangeness. It was the signature of the invader. It was the badge of the other. But let us move beyond the fear of the stranger and into the deeper, more primal currents that flow between living things. Let us speak of the gaze. When eyes meet across the firelight or across a forest clearing, there is an assessment. It is an ancient calculation, performed not by the conscious mind, but by the deep brain, the lizard brain, the seat of desire and reproduction. This chapter of our history is not written in the blood of battle, but in the heat of attraction. There is a theory whispered by evolutionary biologists and poets alike that the chin is not merely a structural buttress or a spandrel of a shrinking face. It is an ornament. It is a signal. It is a monument to the power of sexual selection, the sheer overwhelming force of desire that shapes species more rapidly than the wind shapes the stone. Just as the peacock grows a tail of iridescent eyes that hinders his flight but wins him a mate, or the stag grows antlers of heavy bone that catch in the underbrush but signal his dominance, the human being grew a chin. Imagine the scene shifting to a neutral ground, perhaps a shared water source or a moment of tentative truce. A sapiens man stands in the dying light. He is not the strongest in the physical sense. He cannot wrestle a bear like his Neanderthal cousin. But he possesses a jawline of striking definition. The mental eminence creates a square, rugged outline. In the unspoken language of biology, what is this bone saying? It is singing a song of health. To build bone requires energy. To maintain a prominent feature that serves no immediate survival function, you cannot bite with your chin, you cannot smell with it, signals to a potential mate that you have energy to spare. It is a handicap signal, a biological boast. It says, "Look at me. I am so robust, my developmental stability is so high that I can afford to grow this extra piece of calcium at the tip of my face." Furthermore, in the male of the species, the growth of the lower face is driven by testosterone. A wide, square jaw and a prominent chin are markers of high androgen levels during puberty. But testosterone is a double-edged sword. In high doses, it can suppress the immune system. Therefore, a man who displays strong testosterone markers, like a heavy jaw and a strong chin, and is still standing, still healthy, still alive, is advertising a genetic fortitude of immense value. He is saying, "My immune system is so strong that it can handle the poison of my own virility." The gaze of the female, whether she is sapiens or in those rare and mysterious moments of intermingling Neanderthal, drifts to this feature. It becomes a beacon. In the flickering firelight of the tribe, when the heavy furs are wrapped tight and only the faces are visible, the chin becomes the focal point of the lower face. It balances the eyes. It completes the triangle of attraction. We must deepen the context of this sexual sculpting. Evolution is often thought of as a brutal struggle for survival, the survival of the fittest. But Darwin himself knew there was a second, softer, yet equally powerful force, the survival of the prettiest, or more accurately, the survival of the desired. If a trait is preferred by the opposite sex, it will spread through the population like wildfire, even if it offers no help in escaping a lion or finding a root. Consider the day in the life of a young woman in this Paleolithic era. She is sitting by the hearth, weaving a basket from willow strips. She watches the men return from the hunt. There is one who captures her attention. It is not just his success in the hunt, but the symmetry of his face. The human brain is obsessed with symmetry. It equates symmetry with freedom from disease and mutation. The chin, located at the exact midline of the face, becomes the ultimate arbiter of this symmetry. If the jaw develops unevenly, if the genetic code is unstable, the chin will twist. It will be asymmetrical. A strong, centered, prominent chin is a flag of developmental perfection. It tells the woman that this potential mate has good genes, genes that can build a balanced body in a chaotic world. And so, she chooses him. They mate. Their children inherit the genes for the strong chin and the preference for it. Over thousands of generations, this loop of preference and trait reinforces itself. The chin gets sharper. The jawline gets more defined. We are sculpting ourselves through the sheer power of our own longing. We are breeding a new kind of face, not for the cold, not for the food, but for the love of the aesthetic. But there is a darker, more melancholic beauty to this story when we consider the Neanderthals. Let us return to that meeting in the mist. We know, through the modern miracle of genomics, that we did not just meet our cousins, we mated with them. There are ghosts in our blood. Most people of non-African descent carry between 1 and 2% Neanderthal DNA. Picture a Neanderthal woman looking at a sapiens man. To her, he is exotic. He is gracile, a word that means slender, but also implies grace. His face lacks the heavy bar of the brow. His voice is perhaps higher, more modulated, and he has this strange, jutting bone at the chin. Did she find it beautiful? Did she find it odd? In the study of hybridization, we often find that sexual selection can work across species boundaries when they are closely related. Perhaps the chin was part of the exotic appeal that facilitated these ancient trysts. It was a marker of the new people, the ones who were spreading across the globe. To mate with a sapiens was to join the tide of the future. Conversely, imagine a sapiens woman looking at a Neanderthal male. He is a titan of the ice. His lack of a chin, his sloping jaw, speaks of a different kind of power, an archaic, raw strength. But as the millennia passed and the populations mixed, the heavy features of the Neanderthal were slowly bred out, or perhaps selected against in the hybrid offspring. The chin remained. The sapiens' features dominated. The chin was not just a sexual ornament, it was a banner of the winning lineage. Let us drift forward in time, but stay in the atmosphere of the prehistoric. The ice is retreating. The forests are changing from pine to oak. The fires of the Neolithic Revolution are beginning to dot the landscape. The chin has now become a fixed feature of humanity. It is no longer just a spandrel or a buttress. It is fully integrated into our concept of personhood. The gaze of the other has turned into the gaze of the self. Humans begin to decorate their bodies. They paint their faces with ochre. They scarify their skin. They hang shells and beads around their necks. And where do these necklaces sit? They hang just below the chin, framing it, drawing the eye upward to the jawline. The chin becomes a central landmark in the geography of human ornamentation. Beards are grown and trimmed, perhaps to hide the chin, perhaps to accentuate its size, adding to the illusion of jaw mass. The psychology of the chin enters our language and our posture. We speak of holding one's head high. This is a chin-forward posture. When a primate wants to submit, it lowers its head, tucking the chin, or the lack thereof, into the chest. To expose the chin is to expose the throat, a gesture of confidence and dominance. The mental eminence becomes a mental state. In the flickering light of the tribal council, the leader is often the one who projects this feature. It adds gravity to the face. It makes the profile memorable. We are visual creatures, and the silhouette of the head is the first thing we recognize. The chin extends the vertical line of the face, making the head appear larger, more imposing, without the need for the heavy bone density of the Neanderthal. It is an illusion of size, a trick of geometry that we find compelling. And what of the vulnerability in this evolutionary duality? A protruding chin is, in a physical fight, a liability. It is a lever, termed the button in modern boxing. A strike to the chin rotates the head violently, shaking the brain and causing unconsciousness. If natural selection were solely about fighting, the chin is a disaster. It makes us easier to knock out. The Neanderthal, with his sloping jaw and thick neck, was much harder to concuss. This fact reinforces the theory of sexual selection. We grew a feature that made us physically more vulnerable in a brawl because it made us more successful in the courtship. We traded the iron jaw of the warrior for the glass jaw of the lover. It is a testament to the fact that for Homo sapiens, social success, reproductive access, and aesthetic appeal became more important than raw durability. As the generations fade into dust, the bones of the chinless ones, the Neanderthals, the Denisovans, are swallowed by the earth. They leave behind their stone tools, their enigmatic art, and the small fragments of their DNA within us. But their faces vanish. The face of the earth is taken over by the people of the chin. We carry this legacy today. Walk through a modern city or look at the faces on a cinema screen. What do we idolize? The chiseled jaw, the strong chin. We still use the same criteria as our ancestors in the mist-shrouded forest. We are still looking for that signal of health, of testosterone, of symmetry. We are still captives of the gaze. Every time you find yourself drawn to the sharp definition of a jawline, you are reenacting a drama that is 40,000 years old. You are feeling the echo of an ancient desire that burned in the cold nights of the Pleistocene. You are seeing through the eyes of the ancestors who looked across the fire and saw, in that strange protrusion of bone, a promise of the future. The wind howls through the valley of the Danube, carrying the snows of a new winter. The footprints of the encounter have long since been washed away. But the biological record remains. It is written in the bone. The chin is the scar of our separation, the seal of our specific lineage. It is the feature that the other saw and perhaps envied. and perhaps loved. In the silence of the genome, the choice was made. We chose the face of the storyteller, the face of the social animal, the face of beauty over the face of armor. And so the heavy mask was dropped, and the chin was lifted to the stars, a silent witness to the power of the gaze. Let the image of that first meeting linger, the breath steaming, the eyes locking, the silent assessment of bone and blood. In that moment, two paths diverged. One led to extinction, to the quiet fading of the Neanderthal into the night. The other led to us, the chinned survivors, who would go on to populate every corner of the globe, carrying our badge of sexual selection with us, a permanent reminder that we are the children of desire. The wind does not merely blow across the tundra, it scours it. It is a living, invisible, colossal force that sharpens the edges of the world, stripping the ice of its snow and polishing the tusks of the fallen mammoths until they gleam like ivory moons in the twilight. We are standing in the deep, frozen heart of the last glacial maximum, perhaps 20,000 years ago, on the vast steppe that stretches endlessly across Eurasia. It is a world of white and blue, of silence so profound it rings in the ears, broken only by the chaotic fury of the gale. But let us turn away from the cold. Let us seek shelter. There, tucked into the lee of a limestone escarpment, is a dwelling. It is a round, organic shape, built from the ribs of giants. Curved mammoth bones interlaced and covered with thick, stitched hides of reindeer and bison. It looks like a sleeping animal huddled against the stone. We pull back the heavy flap of the entrance and step inside. The assault of the wind vanishes, replaced by a stillness that feels sacred. The air here is thick and warm, smelling of wood smoke, cured leather, dried herbs, and the milky, sweet scent of life. In the center, a small fire burns, its embers glowing with a gentle, pulsing rhythm, casting long, dancing shadows against the curved walls. And there, in the softest part of the light, rests the center of this universe. A mother is nursing her child. Pause for a moment and let this image settle in your mind. It is a scene that has been repeated billions of times, an unbroken chain of nourishment that links us back through the eons to the very first mammals. But here, in the human context, in the context of Homo sapiens, something unique is happening. The human infant is born into the world uniquely helpless. Unlike the foal that stands within minutes, or the chimp that clings to its mother's fur with iron strength, the human baby is a creature of absolute dependence. It is born early, evicted from the womb before its brain becomes too large to pass through the pelvis, arriving in a state of secondary altriciality. This infant is a traveler who has arrived at the destination before it is fully packed. Its skull is soft, its bones are pliable, its muscles weak. It cannot lift its head. It cannot crawl. It has only a few instincts to keep it alive: the cry, the grasp, and the suckle. Watch closely as the infant feeds. This is not a passive act. It is a complex athletic performance. The baby must latch onto the breast, creating a vacuum seal with its lips. Then, the jaw must work. It acts as a pump. The mandible, the lower jaw, rises and falls, moving in a rhythmic, undulating wave. The tongue, that powerful muscle we spoke of earlier, ripples to strip the milk from the ducts. It is a mechanism of profound delicacy and vital importance. If this seal breaks, if this rhythm fails, the child starves. And here, in the intimate mechanics of this life-giving act, we find a potential purpose for the chin, a purpose that speaks to the very fragility of our beginning. As the face of our species flattened over the last 2 million years, losing the protective snout of our ancestors, a geometric crisis arose. In a chimpanzee or a baboon, the snout projects far forward. When the mother holds the infant close, or when the infant nurses, that protruding muzzle acts as a standoff. It ensures that the nostrils are always clear of the mother's flesh. The air can flow freely around the sides of the snout. But the human face is flat. We have retracted the muzzle. We have pulled the nose and the jaw back until they sit directly beneath the eyes. This orthognathic profile is beautiful to us, but it is dangerous for a nursing infant. When the baby presses its face into the soft, yielding tissue of the breast to feed, there is a risk. The nose, which is small and relatively flat in the newborn, could easily be occluded. The soft flesh could seal over the nostrils, cutting off the breath of life. Consider the terrifying duality of this moment. The infant must press close to eat, yet it must pull back to breathe. Hunger drives it forward. Oxygen demands it retreat. Some paleoanthropologists and anatomists whisper a gentle theory. The chin is the solution. Even in the infant, where the chin is not yet fully pronounced, the structure of the mandible is different from that of an ape. The mental eminence, the bone of the chin, provides a subtle structural point of contact. It juts forward just enough. Imagine the chin as a skeletal snorkel, or perhaps more accurately, a bumper. As the infant latches, the chin presses into the breast. Because the bone is firm, it creates a fulcrum. It pushes the soft tissue of the mother away, creating a triangular pocket of air above the nipple, right where the nose is searching for oxygen. It holds the geometry of the airway open. It ensures that the breath of life flows freely, even when the face is pressed into the deepest embrace of the parent. It is a gentle thought, is it not? That this bony prominence, which we often associate with the rugged masculinity of a superhero or the determination of an elder, might have its roots in the softness of infancy. It serves as a guardian of the first breaths. It is a subtle structural adaptation, ensuring that the vulnerable young can feed and breathe simultaneously. Let us deepen this observation. Watch the rhythm of the jaw again. The infant's mandible is essentially two halves, joined at the chin by fibrous tissue that will eventually fuse into solid bone. This flexibility allows the head to pass through the birth canal, but it makes the jaw mechanically unstable. The chewing muscles in an infant are not yet fully developed, but the tongue is relatively large. The tongue is the engine of breastfeeding. It fills the oral cavity. To extract milk, the baby does not just suck. It compresses the nipple against the roof of the mouth and then lowers the jaw to create a vacuum. The tongue must be anchored firmly to do this work. As we discovered in the chapters on speech, the tongue is anchored to the back of the chin, to the genial tubercles. Even in this tiny developing jaw, the thickening of the bone at the front, the embryonic chin, provides the necessary stiffness to support the tongue's labor. It prevents the jaw from bending too much under the strain of the suction. It is the anchor point for the milking motion. Without this reinforcement, the gracile, wishbone-shaped jaw of the modern human infant might be too weak to sustain the months and years of nursing required to grow our massive brains. So, the chin is a silent partner in the transfer of energy. It is the bridge across which the calories flow from the mother to the child, turning the mother's body reserves into the neural networks of the next generation. The fire pops, sending a shower of sparks drifting toward the smoke hole. The mother shifts her weight. She looks down at the child. Her face is weary, etched with the stress of survival in a world that is always trying to freeze her. But her eyes are filled with a fierce, protective intelligence. She does not know about anatomy. She does not know about the mental eminence or the orthognathic profile. She only knows that her baby is warm, that he is feeding, and that he is breathing. But there is another danger in the dark, one that haunts the nights of all parents, even today. It is the danger of sleep. Human sleep is strange. We sleep deeply, losing muscle tone, paralyzing our bodies so we do not act out our dreams. For an infant, whose airway is narrow and floppy, deep sleep carries a risk. The tongue, that heavy muscle, can fall back into the throat. The soft tissues of the pharynx can collapse. We call this sleep apnea, and in the fragility of infancy, it can be fatal. This is the shadow that hangs over the cradle, the fear that the breathing will stop. Here again, the chin stands guard. The geometry of the human throat is a trade-off. We lowered our larynx to speak, creating a long tube that is excellent for language but terrible for protection. We created a choking hazard of a throat. To compensate, nature had to ensure the airway stayed open. The forward growth of the chin pulls the entire floor of the mouth forward. It pulls the tongue away from the back of the throat. It puts tension on the hyoid bone and the muscles that control the airway. It is like a tent pole. By pushing the front of the tent out, it keeps the roof from collapsing. In the infant, the chin is small, but the trajectory of growth is already set. The mental bone is programmed to grow forward, keeping pace with the tongue, ensuring that as the baby grows and the throat lengthens, the airway remains patent. The chin is a promise. It is a biological pledge that the road to the lungs will be kept clear. Imagine the mother laying the child down on the furs. He falls asleep, his small chest rising and falling in the dim light. The wind howls outside, a predator trying to find a way in. But inside, the baby breathes, in and out, in and out. The chin, jutting slightly, holds the tongue forward. It is a tiny, bony shield against the suffocation of the night. This shield of the infant theory adds a layer of tenderness to our evolutionary story. We often talk of evolution as a battle, nature, red in tooth and claw. We talk of weapons, of running, of fighting. But evolution is also about love. It is about care. It is about the quiet, desperate struggle to keep a helpless thing alive until it can stand on its own. The human face was remodeled by this love. We lost the snout because we didn't need it to fight. We gained the chin because we needed it to nurture. The softening of our features, the retraction of the face, brought us closer together. It allowed for face-to-face intimacy, for kissing, for nuzzling. But it created these structural problems: the blocking of the nose, the closing of the throat. The chin emerged as the necessary correction, the structural apology for our flattened faces. Think of the generations of mothers who sat in the dark, just like this one, listening to the breathing of their children. Think of the anxiety that spans the ages. In the Pleistocene, there were no monitors, no doctors. There was only the vigil. If a child's jaw was too recessed, if the chin did not grow forward enough, perhaps that child did not wake up. Perhaps the SIDS of the Stone Age was a ruthless selector, weeding out those with airways that collapsed too easily. Over thousands of years, the survivors were the ones with the stronger chins, not strong for fighting, but strong for breathing. The genes for this bony protrusion were passed down not just because they were sexy to mates, but because they kept babies alive. We are the descendants of the breathers. We are the children of the open airway. The night deepens. The fire burns down to a bed of glowing coals, looking like a city of red jewels in the darkness. The mother closes her eyes, her hand resting on the baby's back. She drifts into the sleep of the exhausted, trusting in the shelter, trusting in the fire, trusting in the body of her child to keep working. Outside, the great wheel of the galaxy turns overhead, indifferent to the small drama in the hut. But the biology is not indifferent. It has sculpted every curve of bone to ensure that this moment continues. Let us expand our view for a moment, floating up out of the shelter, drifting across the snowy landscape. We see other fires, other shelters, dotted across the vastness of the Ice Age world. In each one, the same scene is playing out: the nursing, the sleeping, the breathing. This is the bottleneck of our species. This is the fragile thread upon which the future hangs. And in every single one of those infants, the chin is there. It is waiting. It is currently a small, rounded curve wrapped in baby fat, soft and undefined. But the blueprint is there. As the child grows, as he begins to chew solid food, as he begins to speak his first words, the bone will respond. It will thicken. It will sharpen. It will thrust forward, becoming the prow of the face. But for now, in the softness of infancy, it is simply a spacer. It is a wedge. It is the thing that makes room for the air. Comparative anatomy tells us that no other primate has this. A chimpanzee infant, born with a snout, does not need a chin to breathe while nursing. Its airway is straight. Its nose is clear. The chimp mother does not have to worry about smothering her baby with her breast in the same way. The chimp baby sleeps with a throat structure that is less prone to collapse. The human condition is a unique package of risks and rewards. We traded the safety of the snout for the power of the brain and the versatility of the voice. The chin is the receipt for that transaction. It is the fix that nature improvised to keep us alive during our most vulnerable years. As the dawn approaches, painting the eastern sky in streaks of gray and pink, the wind finally begins to die down. The silence of the tundra returns, vast and empty. Inside the shelter, the baby stirs. He cries, a thin, reedy sound that pierces the quiet. The mother wakes instantly. This cry, too, is made possible by the unique shape of the human throat and mouth. She picks him up. She brings him to the breast again. The cycle begins anew. The latch, the seal, the rhythmic pumping of the jaw, the tiny nose pressing against the warmth, finding the pocket of air created by the geometry of the chin. It is a mundane miracle. It happens every day, in every corner of the world. But here, in the context of deep time, we see it for what it truly is, a triumph of engineering. We see the body not as a static object, but as a dynamic solution to the problems of existence. The chin is not just a piece of bone. It is a testament to the intimacy of our species. It is a structure that allows us to be held close, to be loved, to be nourished, without losing our connection to the air that sustains us. It is the shield of the infant, forged in the fires of evolution, polished by the love of a million mothers. So, the next time you see a newborn, with its round face and its tiny receding jaw, look closer. Look for the potential. Look for the subtle geometry that keeps the airway open. And remember the Ice Age shelter and the wind and the silent structural work that the bone is doing to ensure that the story of humanity continues, one breath at a time. The chin is the guardian of the threshold, the keeper of the gate, the silent, bony promise of life. The forest holds its breath. suspended in the amber light of a late afternoon that has lasted for 10,000 years. We are deep in the Holocene, or perhaps the very end of the Pleistocene, in a secluded glade where the canopy of ancient oaks and beeches weaves a ceiling of green lace against the sky. The air is still, heavy with the scent of damp moss, decaying leaves, and the sweet resinous perfume of pine. Here, the noise of the world falls away. The distant trumpeting of the last mammoths is a fading memory. The roar of the cave lion is a ghost story told by the elders. In this silence there is only the sound of water, a slow, trickling stream that widens into a still, dark pool, a mirror of obsidian set into the earth. Approaching the water's edge is a figure. He is weary, his skin dusted with the pollen of the tall grasses, his feet calloused from the miles he has walked. He kneels on the soft bank, the mud cool against his knees, and leans forward to drink. But before his lips touch the surface, he pauses. The water is perfectly calm, and in it he sees a face rising to meet him. It is a face we would recognize instantly. It is not the heavy, masked visage of the ancestors who walked the burning savannas millions of years ago. It is not the sloping, aerodynamic profile of the Neanderthal cousins who vanished into the mists of the ice. It is a vertical face, flat and open, framed by unkempt hair. And at the bottom of this face, punctuating the silhouette against the reflection of the clouds, is a sharp, triangular prominence of bone. This is the stranger in the mirror. For a moment, let us suspend time and stand beside him. Let us look into that pool with the eyes of a paleoanthropologist, seeing not just a reflection, but a biological anomaly. Of all the creatures that have ever lived, of all the billions of vertebrates that have swum, crawled, run, and flown across this planet, this specific feature, the true mental eminence, the chin, is unique to the being staring back from the water. It is a profound realization that chills the blood with its implication of solitude. We are the only ones. To understand the magnitude of this strangeness, we must cast our minds back into the dense green tapestry of the primate family tree. We must walk through the gallery of our cousins, the great and small apes with whom we share so much of our DNA, and look closely at their faces. Picture the gibbon, the acrobat of the canopy, swinging through the mist-shrouded rainforests of Southeast Asia. Its body is a marvel of agility, its arms long and fluid. When it stops to sing its haunting, whooping song, look at its profile. The jaw is small, receding, vanishing into the neck. There is no chin. The bone curves back, prioritizing lightness and speed. Move to the ground, to the shadowed floor of the African jungle, where the gorilla reigns. The silverback is a creature of immense majesty, a mountain of muscle and fur. His head is a fortress. The sagittal crest atop his skull anchors jaw muscles of terrifying power. His mandible is a block of dense bone built to grind the toughest bamboo and celery. But trace the line of his jaw. It is a retreating slope. The simian shelf, a thick internal buttress of bone, reinforces the jaw from the inside, behind the teeth. Externally, the chin is absent. His face is a muzzle, a projection of raw force that slopes back to the throat. And what of our closest kin, the chimpanzee? We share nearly 99% of our genetic code with them. We share the capacity for tool use, for war, for laughter, and for grief. We can look into the eyes of a chimp and see a soul that mirrors our own. But we cannot see a chin. The chimp's face is prognathic. The mouth pushes forward, leading the way. The lower jaw retreats immediately from the lip line. If you were to shave a chimpanzee, the difference would be stark. The human jaw finishes with a point, the chimp jaw finishes with a curve. Even our own direct ancestors, the grandfathers and grandmothers of our lineage, did not possess this trait. Homo erectus, the traveler who first walked out of Africa, had a heavy, chinless jaw. Homo heidelbergensis, the common ancestor we share with Neanderthals, had a massive, receding mandible. Even the Neanderthals themselves, so like us in behavior and complexity, lacked this definitive point. So, as the man by the pool touches his own face, tracing the bone that juts forward beneath his lip, he is touching the defining line of his species. If you were to strip away the flesh, if you were to look only at the bleached white skull, the chin is the undeniable stamp of Homo sapiens. It is our species' barcode etched in calcium. Why? The question hangs in the humid air of the glade, unanswered by the wind. Why did nature grant this only to us? Why, in the great laboratory of evolution, was this specific architectural flourish reserved for the single branch of the tree that would go on to dominate the world? It suggests a unique evolutionary path, a perfect storm of biological accidents and adaptations that happened nowhere else. It is a reminder that we are an oddity, a peculiar branch that grew in a strange direction. The chin is not just a bone, it is the physical evidence of our separation. It is the boundary line where we diverged from our cousins and walked alone into the open plains of history. Let us dissect this uniqueness. It is likely that the chin is not the result of a single cause, but a confluence of the three great rivers of human becoming: diet, speech, and domestication. First, the fire. As we explored in the earlier chapters, the invention of cooking softened our world. We are the only primates who cook. No chimp roasts a nut. No gorilla sears a steak. This unique behavior removed the mechanical stress that required the heavy internal simian shelf. We are the only primates whose jaws shrank so dramatically while our brains expanded so explosively. The chin is the residue of this shrinking, the spandrel left behind when the face collapsed inward. It is the signature of the chef. Second, the voice. We are the only primates with complex syntactic language. We are the only ones who tell stories about things that are not present. The acrobatic tongue required for this speech needed a specific kind of anchor. The genial tubercles on the inside of the chin and the buttressing of the bone on the outside may be the unique structural solution to the problem of the speaking jaw. The chin is the signature of the poet. Third, the peace. We are the only primates who have self-domesticated to this extent. We are the only ones who live in cities of millions of strangers without constant warfare. This social tolerance lowered our testosterone, shrank our faces, and exposed the chin. It is the signature of the friend. But there is something deeper here, something that goes beyond the mechanics of bone and muscle. There is the psychological weight of the chin. It plays a role in how we perceive ourselves and each other. Imagine the uncanny valley. This is a modern term for the feeling of revulsion we get when we see a robot or a digital character that looks almost human, but not quite. Often, the thing that is off is the proportion of the face. When we look at reconstructions of our ancestors, the Australopithecines or the early Homo species, we feel a kinship, but also a distance. They look animalistic to us. Why? Because the lower face dominates. The lack of a chin makes the mouth look like a snout. The chin acts as a visual counterweight. It balances the face. It creates a vertical plane that aligns the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. It humanizes the visage. When we look at the stranger in the mirror, the chin tells us, "You are sapiens." It is the anchor of our identity. Let us return to the glade. The sun is setting now, casting long golden shadows across the water. The man splashes his face, shattering the reflection. The ripples distort the image, turning the chin into a wavering line, then settling back into stillness. He stands up. He runs a hand over his jaw, feeling the rough stubble of a beard. Underneath the hair and the skin, he feels the bone. It is hard, triangular, unyielding. It is a weapon of a different sort, not for biting, but for being. Consider the day in the life of this trait in a social context. The man walks back to his camp. The fires are lit. He greets his family. As they talk, their chins move. The light catches the varied shapes of this bone. Some are square and rugged, broad as a shovel. Some are pointed and delicate. Some are cleft, marked by a dimple where the two halves of the jaw fused imperfectly in the womb. This variation is itself a wonder. In most species, facial structure is relatively uniform. A tiger looks like a tiger. A chimp looks like a chimp. But human chins are incredibly diverse. This diversity suggests that the chin has become a canvas for sexual selection, a place where nature plays with form. We look at each other's chins to read character, to assess strength, to find beauty. We are obsessed with this small piece of bone. Now imagine a meeting that might have happened in the deep past, a moment of profound recognition. A human mother holds her infant. She also holds, perhaps as a curiosity or a pet, a baby monkey found in the forest. She looks at the two faces side by side. The monkey infant is adorable, with large eyes and a small face, but its jaw recedes. Its profile is a curve. Then she looks at her own child. Even in the softness of baby fat, there is a difference. The human child's face is flat, vertical. The chin is a promise waiting to emerge. She realizes, in a way that requires no language, that her child is something else. The geometry of the face separates her kin from the rest of the animal kingdom. This separation is both a point of pride and a source of existential loneliness. We are the lonely ape. We have no surviving siblings. The Neanderthals are gone. The Denisovans are gone. The hobbits of Flores are gone. We are the last twig on the bush, and the chin is our badge of solitude. It is a reminder that we survived when others did not. The heavy-jawed ones perished. The ones who could crack nuts with their teeth but could not adapt to the changing climate or the new diseases or the competition. They are all dust. The glass-jawed humans, the ones with the fragile mandibles reinforced by a chin, the ones who relied on fire and friends, are the ones who inherited the earth. There is a mystery here that science has yet to fully unravel. Some researchers argue that the chin is merely a mechanical byproduct, a spandrel with no adaptive value, like the color of blood. They say it is just what happens when you shrink a face. But if that were true, why do we find it so attractive? Why does it play such a crucial role in managing the stress of our chewing? Why does it support the airway? Perhaps nature is more opportunistic than we think. Perhaps it took a spandrel and turned it into a masterpiece. It took a piece of leftover bone and made it the cornerstone of the human face. The night falls fully now. The pool in the glade is black, reflecting only the moon. The stranger is gone, back to the warmth of the tribe. But the reflection remains, waiting for the next face to look into it. As you listen to this, in the quiet of your own night, raise your hand, touch your chin, feel the point of it, feel the width. You are touching a mystery. You are touching the physical evidence of a million-year journey that took a turning that no other creature took. You are touching the mental eminence. The name itself is poetic. It implies that this bone is somehow connected to the mind, to the mental capacity of the human. And in a way, it is. It is the jaw of the thinker. It is the jaw of the speaker. It is the jaw of the one who looks in the mirror and asks, "Who am I?" The gibbon does not ask this. The gorilla does not ask this. They are complete in their existence, woven seamlessly into the fabric of nature. But we, with our strange faces and our jutting chins, we stand slightly apart. We are the observers. We are the questioners. The chin is the prow of the ship of humanity. As we sail through time, facing the storms of history and the unknowns of the future, this bone leads the way. It breaks the wind. It defines our profile against the stars. Think of the skull of a modern human, buried in the earth for 5,000 years. The flesh has rotted away. The eyes are gone. The hair is dust. But the chin remains. It is the last thing to dissolve. It is the most durable part of our identity. When an archaeologist brushes away the dirt and sees that triangular point, they know instantly, here lies a human. Here lies one of us. It is a badge of belonging to the most peculiar club on earth. It is a symbol of our vulnerability. We traded the fang for the chin and our resilience. It is the bone that no other primate has, the stranger in the mirror that has become our most familiar friend. Let the thought drift through your mind like the leaves on the surface of the pool. We are unique. We are solitary. We are beautiful in our strangeness. And it is all written in the curve of the bone that rests in the palm of your hand. The forest sleeps. The water is still. And deep in the code of life, the instruction for the chin is copied and recopied and passed down, a silent letter in the alphabet of our being, ensuring that the stranger in the mirror will never truly be lost. We carry the glade within us. We carry the separation. And we carry the chin, the silent witness to our lonely, wondrous walk into the open plains of history. The sky above is a sheet of iron, hammered flat by the cold and stretching unbroken from one horizon to the other. We have left the vibrant, sun-drenched cradle of the South far behind, and the world has turned white. This is the era of the Great Chill, the Pleistocene epoch in its most formidable guise. The pendulum of the planet's climate has swung violently toward the frost, locking the continents in a white embrace that stifles the green pulse of the earth. The oceans have retreated, sucked up into mile-high cathedrals of ice that sit heavy upon the northern lands, their weight so immense that they depress the very crust of the planet. We are standing on the mammoth steppe, a biome that no longer exists in the modern world. A vast, dry, cold grassland stretching from Spain to Siberia, a highway of wind and dust. The air here is thin and bites at the lungs with the sharpness of shattered glass. It is a world of giants, the woolly mammoth, with its curved tusks sweeping the snow, the woolly rhino, a tank of muscle and fur, and the cave lion, a silent shadow stalking the herds. And moving through this landscape, small and fragile against the scale of the ice, are the travelers. They are us. They are the anatomically modern humans, the Homo sapiens who have ventured out of Africa and into the freezing winds of the north. Look at them as they trudge through the knee-deep drifts. They are wrapped in sewn furs, a technology of insulation that is their first line of defense against the cold. But look at their faces, exposed to the biting gale. The skin is chapped, the eyes narrowed against the glare of the sun reflecting off the snow. And at the bottom of these faces, defining the profile against the stark white background, is the chin. This bony prominence, this mental eminence, is no longer a spandrel or a hesitant experiment. It is fully formed. It is a passenger on the greatest migration in history. It has traveled with us out of the Rift Valley, across the green corridors of the Sahara during a wet period, through the bottleneck of the Levant, and now into the heart of the cryosphere. It is a silent witness to the adaptability of our species. The chin did not evolve for the cold. It does not retain heat like a compact nasal cavity, nor does it protect the eyes like a fat-padded lid. But it is part of the package that is surviving the cold. It is the prow of the ship that is navigating the ice. Imagine the sheer physical endurance required to exist here. The concept of comfort has vanished. Life is a binary equation. Keep moving or freeze. The body is under constant siege. The metabolism must burn furiously just to maintain a core temperature of 98 degrees in an environment that plunges to 40 below zero. Every calorie matters. Every ounce of biological efficiency is tested. In this frozen theater, the jaw finds a new and brutal role. It is no longer just for eating. It is a tool of industry. In the absence of metal, in the scarcity of wood, the mouth becomes the third hand. Watch a woman of the tribe sitting by a meager fire of bone and dried dung. She is working a reindeer hide, preparing it to be sewn into a parka. The hide is stiff, frozen, unyielding. To soften it, she must chew it. She folds the leather and places it between her teeth, clamping down and pulling with her hands, stretching the fibers, breaking the rigor of the cold. This is paramasticatory activity, using the jaws for purposes other than eating. It places an immense, unnatural strain on the mandible. The force required to grip and pull the hide is far greater than the force needed to chew meat. The jaw is pulled forward, twisted, and subjected to shearing forces that would snap a weaker bone. Here, the chin proves its worth as a silent buttress once again. The thickened bone at the symphysis, the point of the chin, reinforces the jaw against these industrial loads. It prevents the wishbone shape of the mandible from deforming under the tension of the hide working. Without this reinforcement, the gracile jaw of the modern human might fail. The chin allows us to use our mouths as clamps, as pliers, as vices. In a world where clothing means survival, the ability to process hides with the mouth is a superpower. The chin, indirectly, helps to clothe the tribe. As the wind howls outside the shelter, rising to a scream that drowns out thought, let us consider the other human lineages that are sharing this frozen world. We are not alone in the ice. The Neanderthals are here too. They have lived in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. They are the true masters of the cold. Their bodies are stocky and barrel-chested, designed to conserve heat. Their noses are large radiators, warming the air before it hits the lungs. Their bones are thick, their muscles dense, but they are fading. The fossil record tells a haunting story of this era. As the glaciers advanced and the climate fluctuated with violent unpredictability, the populations of our cousins began to blink out like candles in a storm. The Denisovans in the east, the Neanderthals in the west, they were retreating into the twilight of extinction. They possessed the heavy, sloping jaws of the archaic world. They lacked the chin, and though they were stronger than us, though they were physically more robust, they could not hold back the dark. Why did the people of the chin survive while the people of the heavy jaw perished? It is one of the greatest mysteries of deep time. Perhaps the answer lies not in the strength of the bone, but in the software of the mind that the bone supports. As we discussed in the cradle of the tongue, the chin anchors the complex machinery of speech. In the harsh conditions of the Ice Age, communication was the ultimate survival tool. To coordinate a hunt of a mammoth, a creature the size of a building, requires complex planning. It requires language that can describe the future, that can assign roles, that can convey the concept of a trap. To share the knowledge of where the seasonal herds are moving or which plants are poisonous requires a vocabulary of high precision. The Neanderthals spoke, certainly, but the sapiens, with their chins and their descended larynxes, may have possessed a social technology that was slightly more efficient. We could weave larger social networks. We could maintain connections with tribes 100 miles away, exchanging mates and information. We could trade. The chin, then, is the physical residue of the social brain. It is the trademark of the species that survived by talking to each other. While the Neanderthal bands may have become isolated in their valleys, cut off by the snows, inbreeding and slowly dying out, the sapiens maintained a web of connection. We gossiped our way through the Ice Age. The chin is the antenna of this network. Imagine a night during the depths of the glacial maximum. The tribe is huddled in a cave in what is now southern France. The entrance is blocked with stones and hides to keep out the cave bears. Inside, the air is smoky and close. They are starving. The hunt has failed for 3 days. The cold is a physical weight, pressing against the chest. In the center of the huddle, an old woman speaks. Her voice is a rasp, but her words are clear. She tells a story of a winter long ago, of how her ancestors survived by cracking the bones of the dead for marrow. She speaks of resilience. The others listen, their eyes fixed on her face. Her chin, sharp and defined in the firelight, moves with the rhythm of her words. It is a beacon of authority. This transmission of knowledge, this cultural ratchet, is what saves them. They do not have to reinvent the wheel every generation. They can stand on the shoulders of the ancestors. The chin, by facilitating the articulation of this wisdom, becomes a lifeline. The lineage of the chin is also a lineage of dietary flexibility. The Ice Age was a time of nutritional chaos. The grand, stable ecosystems of the past were broken. One valley might have reindeer, the next might be barren. The sapiens were generalists. We ate everything. We caught fish with bone hooks, we snared hares, we gathered tubers from the frozen earth. Our jaws, though smaller and weaker than the Neanderthals, were versatile. The chin buttressed the jaw for chewing dried meat, yes, but the overall gracilization of the face was linked to a body that required fewer calories to build and maintain. The massive skeleton of a Neanderthal was expensive. It needed huge amounts of high-quality protein every day. When the game disappeared, they starved. The sapiens, lighter and more efficient, could survive on less. The chin represents the economy model of the human, a sleeker, more fuel-efficient design that could outlast the famine. We carried this bone structure through the bottlenecks. Geneticists tell us that at certain points in our history, perhaps exacerbated by the eruption of supervolcanoes like Toba or the sheer brutality of the climate, the human population dropped to a few thousand breeding pairs. We were an endangered species. We were teetering on the edge of the abyss. The entire future of humanity, all the cities, the symphonies, the wars, the love stories, was contained in a few small bands of shivering wanderers. In those dark centuries, every birth was a miracle. Every survivor was a statistical anomaly, and every single one of those survivors had a chin. The trait had become fixed. It was no longer being selected for in a vacuum. It was simply the face of the survivor. To be human was to have a chin. The two concepts had merged. The chin traveled with us across the Bering Land Bridge, Beringia, that vast, sunken subcontinent that once connected Asia to the Americas. Imagine the silence of that crossing. A flat, grassy plain stretching between two walls of ice, the wind screaming off the Arctic Ocean. The ancestors of the Native Americans walked this path, carrying the chin into a new hemisphere. They carried it down the ice-free corridors of Canada, into the Great Plains, into the jungles of the Amazon, and all the way to the tip of Tierra del Fuego. In every environment, from the high altitude of the Andes to the humidity of the rainforest, the chin remained. It did not dissolve. It did not revert. It is a stubborn traveler. It is a consistent feature recorded in the fossil record. We find skulls buried in the permafrost of Siberia, their bones stained brown by the peat, and the chin is there. We find skulls in the desert caves of the Levant, bleached white by the heat, and the chin is there. It serves as a chronicle of our resilience. It is a physical memory of the time when the world tried to kill us with cold and failed. As the millennia drag on, a slow, imperceptible change begins to take hold. The summers get a little longer. The meltwater streams turn into rivers. The edges of the great ice sheets begin to fracture and groan. The thaw has begun. The Holocene, the entirely new epoch, is dawning. The landscape turns from white to green. The birch forests advance north, reclaiming the steppe. The mammoths, unable to adapt to the soggy ground and the changing vegetation, begin their long march into oblivion. The world of the ice is ending, but the echo remains. The humans who emerge from the caves and the skin tents to squint at the bright, warming sun are different from the ones who entered the Ice Age. They have been tempered. They have been honed. They are the ultimate survivors, and they still wear the badge of their journey on their faces. The chin you possess today is an heirloom. It is not a modern invention. It is an artifact from the deep past, passed down through an unbroken chain of mothers and fathers who outlasted the ice. When you feel the cold wind on your face on a winter day, and you grit your teeth against the chill, you are replicating the sensation of 1,000 ancestors. Your chin is a trophy. It was carved by the elements, not directly, but by the survival of those who bore it. It was polished by time. It is a testament to the fact that your lineage did not fade into the twilight like the Denisovans. You are here. The silent buttress held. The stranger in the mirror did not blink. We are the children of the frost, and the chin is the seal of our victory over the winter. It reminds us that we are creatures of endurance, built to walk into the wind and keep going, mile after frozen mile, until we find the warmth of the fire. The great ice sheets, those white tyrants that had held the northern hemisphere in a grip of iron for 100,000 years, finally begin to weep. The sound of the world changes. The howling, hollow wind of the glacial steppe is replaced by the roar of rushing water, the drip of melting icicles, and the soft, squelching return of the mud. We are crossing the threshold into the Holocene, the entirely new epoch. The light softens, the air warms, and the vast golden grasslands of the mammoth hunters give way to the encroachment of the forests, a slow-moving army of birch and oak reclaiming the land. We have arrived at the dawn of the modern era. It is a transition as profound as the first control of fire, yet it happens quietly, measured in the slow retreat of the glaciers and the slow advance of the grain. The hunter-gatherer, the wanderer who followed the herds and the seasons, who lived by the sharpness of the eye and the endurance of the leg, is about to undergo a metamorphosis. He is stopping. He is putting down roots, both metaphorical and literal. This is the Neolithic Revolution. It is the moment when humanity struck a bargain with the grass. We learned that if we cleared the forest, if we scratched the earth with the shoulder blade of an ox, and if we planted the seeds of the wild wheat and the barley, the land would feed us. We became farmers. We built walls. We built granaries. We built the first cities of mud, brick, and stone. But as we domesticated the earth, we were also domesticating ourselves, and specifically, we were domesticating our own faces. Walk through a settlement in the Fertile Crescent, perhaps Jericho or Çatalhöyük, 9,000 years ago. The air smells of baking. It is a new scent in the history of the world, the warm, yeast-filled aroma of bread rising in clay ovens. The soundscape has changed, too. Gone is the constant crunching of raw tubers and the tearing of tough wild meats. In its place is the rhythmic, grinding sound of the quernstone, two heavy rocks rubbing against each other, pulverizing the grain into flour. This stone is the external stomach of the Neolithic. It does the work that the jaw once did. It breaks down the tough cell walls of the plants before they ever enter the mouth. The diet of humanity softens dramatically. We begin to eat porridges, gruels, soups, and soft-baked loaves. We discover fermentation, drinking beer and wine. We milk animals and make cheese. The industrial revolution of the mouth has begun, and the biological consequences are swift and severe. Recall the silent buttress of the previous chapters, how the jawbone grew thick and strong in response to the stress of chewing. Now, that stress is gone. The human mandible, a structure that operates on the use it or lose it principle of Wolff's Law, receives the signal that the war is over. The heavy lifting is done, and so the bone begins to shrink. It is a slow, generational withering. The jaw becomes shorter. The dental arch becomes narrower. The face, already flat and retracted compared to our ape ancestors, pulls back even further. We are becoming the gracile humans of the history books, the people with the delicate features and the slender bones. But here, in the silence of the genome, a mismatch occurs, a traffic jam in the code of life. The genetics that control the size of our teeth are much older and more stubborn than the genetics that control the size of our jaw. The teeth are like travelers who bought their tickets millions of years ago, expecting a spacious hall. They arrive in the modern mouth to find that the room has shrunk. The jaw has remodeled itself for the soft diet of the farmer, but the teeth are still sized for the hunter. This is the birth of the malocclusion epidemic. It is a story of crowding. The teeth twist and turn, fighting for space in the diminishing real estate of the alveolar bone. The wisdom teeth, the third molars, once the vital crushing tools of late adolescence, find themselves with nowhere to go. They become impacted, trapped beneath the gum, ghosts haunting the back of the mouth, pressing against the nerves, causing pain that our ancestors rarely knew. If you look at the skulls of pre-agricultural humans, their teeth are almost always straight, their arches wide and perfect. They smile with the broad, U-shaped grin of the hunter. Look at the skulls of the early farmers and the modern humans who followed, and you see the chaos of the V-shaped jaw, the snaggletooth, the crowding. We gained the security of the harvest, but we lost the perfection of the smile. Yet, Amidst this architectural collapse of the mouth, the chin remains. In fact, the chin becomes more prominent. As the alveolar bone, the part holding the teeth, retreats due to the lack of chewing stress, and the teeth crowd backward, the basal bone of the chin stands its ground. The recession of the tooth-bearing bone leaves the chin jutting out in even starker relief. It is the last man standing on the retreating shoreline of the face. The chin has transcended its biological origins. It has survived the softening of the diet. It has survived the crowding of the teeth. It has moved beyond being a mere buttress for stress, for there is little stress left to buttress, and has entered the realm of the aesthetic. It has become a symbol. Let us drift forward through the centuries, watching as the chin rises in the human imagination. We are in the studios of the Renaissance masters. The air smells of oil paint and marble dust. Michelangelo is carving the statue of David. He is sculpting the ideal human form, the epitome of youth and strength. Look at the face of the giant slayer. The brow is smooth, the nose straight, but the jaw is the anchor. The chin is deep, square, resolute. In the artistic language of the West, and indeed in many cultures around the world, the strong chin becomes a shorthand for character. It represents determination. It represents fortitude. Why? Perhaps because the chin is the anatomical opposite of the soft throat. To lower the chin is to protect the neck, a gesture of submission or defense. To lift the chin, to keep one's chin up, is to expose the most vulnerable part of the body, the jugular and the windpipe, to the world. It is an act of defiance. It is a biological gamble that we have translated into a psychological virtue. When we say a person took it on the chin, we mean they withstood a blow without flinching, without hiding. The bone that began as a spandrel, a geometric accident of a shrinking snout, has become the seat of courage in our linguistic soul. Consider the Habsburg jaw, the famous deformity of the European royal lines. Here, the chin grew to grotesque proportions, jutting out so far that the teeth could not meet. It was a marker of inbreeding, yes, but it was also, strangely, a marker of power. It was the feature of the ruling class. In portraits, it was emphasized, not hidden. The chin, even in its extreme, was the signature of the bloodline. We move now into the industrial age. The smoke of the coal fires blackens the skies of London and Pittsburgh. The diet softens even further. Canned foods, refined sugars, white breads. The need to chew is almost entirely eliminated. The jaw weakens again. The face narrows. The long face syndrome becomes common, where the mouth hangs open and the chin drops down and back. But still, the cultural obsession with the chin persists. In the dawn of photography, early subjects are told to sit still, to hold their heads high. The silhouette is everything. We begin to photograph ourselves, freezing our image in silver nitrate. And what do we look for? We look for the definition of the jawline. We look for the cut of the chin. In the cinema of the 20th century, the chin becomes a star. The superheroes of the comic books are drawn with jaws like anvils. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, they are defined by the heroic chin. It is a square block of justice. It implies an unshakable will. Even though these characters fly and stop bullets, their physical design is rooted in the paleo-anthropological preference for the strong mate, the healthy survivor we discussed in the chapter on the gaze. We are still the hunter-gatherers looking across the fire, attracted to the sign of high testosterone and strong bone, even if that bone is now projected onto a silver screen or a smartphone pixel. And now? We stand at the true modern threshold. We are the astronauts. Picture a human being floating in the cupola of the International Space Station, 200 miles above the blue marble of the Earth. The environment is sterile, controlled, artificial. There is no wind here. There is no predators. The food comes in vacuum-sealed packets, hydrated shrimp, soft tortillas, processed pastes. There is absolutely no need for a biological vice to crush bones or tear raw meat. The astronaut's face is the culmination of our entire evolutionary journey. It is gracile, the brain case large and bulbous, the face tucked underneath. The teeth may have been straightened by orthodontics, the modern answer to the mismatch, where we use wires and force to do the work that hard food once did, widening the arch to fit the teeth. But inside the helmet, illuminated by the light of the stars, is the chin. It is a vestige. In this environment, it serves no mechanical purpose. The buttress is buttressing nothing. The shield of the infant is not needed in a world of advanced medical care. The cradle of the tongue is still functioning, of course. The astronaut speaks to mission control with precise, technical language. But the heavy reinforcement is physically redundant. Yet, it is profoundly significant. It is the only piece of wild anatomy left on the face. The eyes are shielded by gold-plated visors. The skin is covered by Nomex and Kevlar. The body is sustained by life support systems. But the bone of the chin is the same bone that jutted from the face of the Ice Age wanderer. It is the same bone that the Neanderthals saw in the mist. It is a bridge. When the astronaut looks down at the Earth, they are looking at a planet that has been completely transformed by the species with the chin. We have carved the mountains, diverted the rivers, and warmed the atmosphere. We have become a geological force. And we did it all with this specific facial architecture, the face of the talker, the face of the socializer, the face of the one who could not bite, so they built. There is a poignancy to the modern condition. We spend billions of dollars on surgeries to enhance the chin, to insert silicone implants that mimic the bone, to sharpen the jawline with fillers. We are trying to reclaim the wildness we have lost. We are trying to sculpt back into our soft, modern faces the rugged definition of the ancestor who survived the cold. We feel the loss of the heavy jaw, even if we don't understand it intellectually. We sense that our faces are melting away, becoming too soft, too indistinct. So we pose for the selfie. We tilt our heads up. We thrust the jaw forward. We search for the best light to catch the edge of the mental eminence. We are performing an ancient display ritual in a digital medium. We are saying, I am here. I am strong. I am a survivor. The chin has become a canvas upon which we project our personality. A weak chin is seen as a flaw of character, a strong chin as a virtue. These are biological lies. The size of the bone has nothing to do with the content of the soul, but they are evolutionary truths. We are hardwired to read the face this way. We cannot escape the gaze of the Pleistocene. As we move into the future, into a world of artificial intelligence and genetic engineering, the chin stands as a reminder of where we came from. It is a spandrel that became a crown. It is a mistake that became a masterpiece. Imagine the future human, 10,000 years from now. Will the face continue to shrink? Will the teeth disappear entirely, replaced by technology? Will the chin finally erode away, leaving a smooth, egg-like skull? Or will we keep it, preserving it as a beloved antique, a reminder of the days when we were animals who walked the earth? For now, it remains. It is the seat of determination in the human imagination. It is the physical residue of peace, the bony peace treaty signed between our biology and our social evolution. It is the anchor for the tongue that tells the story of the universe. We turn away from the mirror of the past. We step out of the museum of history and into the sunlight of the present day. The noise of the city surrounds us, the cars, the voices, the music. It is a cacophony of sound, all produced by the complex throats and agile tongues of 7 billion human beings. And beneath every single one of those moving mouths, hidden under the skin, is the silent, triangular bone. It is a secret kept by the species. It is a shared heritage. Whether you are a farmer in the rice paddies of Asia, a banker in the canyons of New York, or a hunter in the rapidly shrinking forests of the Amazon, you share this feature. You are a member of the clan of the chin. It is a vestige, yes, but a vestige is not trash. A vestige is a memory. It is a trace. It is a footprint left in the sand by the giant that was the past. So, take a moment in your modern life, amidst the softness and the safety, to feel the line of your jaw. Feel the hardness of it. It is the prow of your personal ship, cutting through the waves of time. It is the legacy of the fire, the ice, the speech, and the love. It is the bone that no other primate has, the final, elegant flourish of a nature that never stops creating. The hunter has become the astronaut, but the chin remains the same. It is the fixed point in a turning world. And as we look toward the stars, perhaps dreaming of new worlds to walk upon, we will carry this ancient piece of earth with us, leading the way, chin up, into the velvet darkness of the great unknown. The great wheel of the cosmos turns slowly overhead, a mechanism of infinite precision and indifferent beauty. We have reached the end of our journey, traveling from the scorching, sun-bleached savannas of the Pliocene through the mist-shrouded forests of the Neanderthals, across the frozen white expanse of the mammoth steppe, and finally, to this quiet room, to this moment of stillness where you now lay your head. The day is done. The noise of the modern world, the electronic hum, the traffic, the voices, has faded into the velvet silence of the night. You are alone with your thoughts, and you are alone with your body, but you are not truly alone. As you settle into the warmth of your sheets, as your breathing slows to match the rhythm of the turning earth, you are cradled by a ghost. It is a friendly ghost, a silent partner that has been with you since the moment your cells first knit themselves together in the womb. It is the structure of your own face. It is the legacy in the bone. We have spent this time together tracing the biography of a single feature, a small prominence of calcium that juts forward from the lower jaw. To the casual observer, the chin is nothing more than a shape, a curve of the profile captured in a photograph or reflected in a mirror. But we know better now. We have walked the long road of deep time. We have seen that this bone is a library. It is a physical archive of everything our species has endured, everything we have sacrificed, and everything we have become. Think of the chin as a final seal upon the document of human evolution. It is the wax stamp that closes the scroll. Inside the marrow of this bone, and in the dense white lattice of its structure, the history of the human race is written in a code more ancient than any language. It is written in the geometry of stress and the architecture of survival. As you lie there, let your mind drift back one last time, not to the specific eras we have visited, but to the feeling of those eras, the sensory memories that are etched into your very anatomy. Can you feel the heat of the first fire? It is there, hidden in the recession of your teeth. The chin exists because we tamed the flame. When our ancestors first captured that wild orange energy and used it to soften the fibers of the hunt, they set in motion a collapse of the facial fortress. The heavy grinding jaws of the ape, built for hours of chewing raw root and tough muscle, were no longer needed. The fire did the work for us. And so, the face retreated. The muzzle shrank. The chin was left behind, a lonely promontory on the shoreline of the retreating bone. Every time you eat a warm meal, every time you savor the softness of bread, you are participating in the ritual that created your chin. It is a monument to the hearth. Can you hear the echo of the first story? It is there, anchored to the back of your jaw. The chin exists because we found our voice. As the social bonds of our species tightened, as we needed to convey more than just alarm or aggression, our tongues became the dancers of the mouth. They needed a stage. They needed a cradle. The bone thickened at the front of the jaw to support the acrobatic movements of speech, to hold the airway open, to allow the breath to be shaped into the complex music of language. Every word you whispered today, every song you have ever sung, every I love you spoken in the dark, owes its existence to the silent buttress of the chin. It is a monument to the word. Can you feel the gaze of the stranger? It is there, in the sharp definition of the mental eminence. The chin exists because we fell in love. In the flickering light of the Pleistocene camps, amidst the fear and the cold, our ancestors looked at each other and found beauty. They saw in the symmetry of the jaw a signal of health, a promise of good genes, a badge of the new people who were surviving the ice. We selected for it. We bred for it. We sculpted this bone with the sheer power of our desire, generation after generation, sharpening the point, widening the square. It is a monument to attraction. And can you feel the cold wind of the ice? It is there, in the stubborn persistence of the trait. The chin exists because we are survivors. When the glaciers advanced and the other human lineages faded into the long night of extinction, we kept walking. We carried this bone through the bottlenecks of starvation, across the land bridges, into the new worlds. It protected our jaws when we used them as tools to soften hides. It protected our airways when we were helpless infants at the breast. It is the shield that held. It is a monument to resilience. This is the legacy in the bone. It is a tapestry woven from threads of fire, speech, love, and chance, pulled tight over a frame of calcium. Now, in the quiet of the night, bring your attention to the sensation of your own jaw. It is likely relaxed now, the teeth slightly parted, the tongue resting on the roof of the mouth or in the floor of the jaw. Feel the weight of it. It is a heavy bone, the hardest in the human body. It is the only bone in the skull that moves, the only one that breaks the silence of the skeletal mask. When you touch your chin, perhaps grazing it with your hand or feeling it press into the pillow, you are touching the boundary line. You are touching the physical evidence of the separation between Homo sapiens and every other creature that has ever lived. The chimpanzee, our closest cousin, sleeps in the forest tonight. Its jaw slopes back, a powerful clamp designed for a world of raw nature. The ghost of the Neanderthals sleeps in the earth, its heavy, chinless jaw dissolving into the strata. But you, the modern human, you possess this unique flourish. You are the oddity. You are the strange branch that grew in a peculiar direction. Why did nature grant this only to us? It is a question that science answers with theories of biomechanics and sexual selection, but poetry answers with a different truth. Perhaps the chin is the prow of the ship. Imagine your body as a vessel sailing through the ocean of deep time. The wake behind you is the past, the millions of years of evolution, the struggle of the single-celled organisms, the fish that crawled onto land, the shrews that hid from the dinosaurs, the apes that stood up in the grass. That wake stretches back to the beginning of the world. But the face is the front of the ship. It faces the future, and the chin is the prow. It cuts through the waves of time. It is the leading edge of our humanity. It juts forward, aggressive yet elegant, signaling our arrival. It is the physical manifestation of our species' momentum. We are the forward-facing apes. We are the ones who look ahead. The chin, in its jutting prominence, mimics this psychological stance. It says, "We are going this way." As you lay here, safe and warm, consider the concept of the spandrel one last time. We spoke of how the chin might have started as an accident, a geometric leftover from the shrinking of the teeth. There is a profound humility in this thought. We often like to think of ourselves as the perfect culmination of a grand plan, designed with intent. But nature is often a cobbler, making do with the materials at hand, improvising, repurposing. A mistake in the code, a differential growth rate between two parts of the jaw, became the defining feature of our face. An accident became an identity. This is the beauty of the biological narrative. We are not perfect machines. We are a collage of accidents that worked. We are the result of 1 billion coin tosses that all came up heads. The chin is the ultimate symbol of this serendipity. It shouldn't really be there. It serves no singular, undeniable mechanical function that couldn't be solved another way. And yet, it is there. It is the silent secret kept by our species. It is a badge of our uniqueness that we wear on our faces every day, mostly without knowing it. Let this knowledge deepen your relaxation. You are a masterpiece of evolution, but you are also a masterpiece of chance. You are here against the odds. The bone in your face is a testament to the fact that your lineage did not break. Through the fire, through the ice, through the plague and the famine, your ancestors lived long enough to pass the torch. And with that torch, they passed the chin. The stars wheel overhead, indifferent to our small lives. They burn with the same cold light that they cast upon the mammoth steppe. But we are not indifferent. We are the makers of meaning. We look at the bone, and we see a story. Deep within the marrow, the cells are quiet now. The osteocytes, the guardians of the bone, are resting. The remodeling of the jaw, which happens constantly throughout your life, slows its pace in the dark. The body enters its cycle of repair. It is knitting together the wear and tear of the day. Think of the chin as an anchor. Just as it anchors the muscles of the tongue, let it anchor your mind now. Let it be a heavy, comforting weight that holds you in the present moment. You are not wandering the savannah. You are not fighting the cave lion. You are not shivering in the glacial wind. You are here. You are safe. The struggles of the ancestors are over. They have done the hard work. They have chewed the tough roots. They have walked the frozen miles. They have fought the battles. All that is left for you to do is to rest. Feel the tension draining out of your face. Let the muscles of the jaw release. Let the masseters, those ancient engines of the bite, unclench. Let the temporalis muscles on the side of your head soften. Let the mental muscle, the small muscle of the chin itself, relax. As the face softens, You are mimicking the great evolutionary journey of our species. We went from the hard, tense mask of the warrior to the soft, open face of the dreamer. In sleep, you return to that softness. You become the neotenous, gentle human that self-domestication created. The chin remains firm, the only hard point in a landscape of relaxation. It guards the airway, it keeps the gate open. It ensures that the breath flows smoothly, in and out, a rhythmic tide that connects you to the atmosphere of the planet. In the silence of the room, you are connected to the deep past. The history of the human race is not in a book, it is in you. It is in the curve of your fingers, the arch of your foot, and the point of your chin. You are a walking museum. You are a living fossil. And as you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine that long line of ancestors standing behind you. They are shadowy figures, stretching back into the mist. There is the farmer from the Neolithic, wiping flour from his face. There is the hunter from the Ice Age, pulling his fur hood tight. There is the dreamer in the cave, painting a bison on the wall. There is the wanderer on the Savannah, looking up at a new star. They are all watching you. They are the cloud of witnesses. And they are all smiling. And if you look closely at their smiles, you see it. The feature that unites them all. The feature that separates them from the darkness. The chin. It is a legacy of resilience. It is a legacy of adaptation. It is a legacy of beauty. The night is a velvet blanket, wrapping you in the same darkness that covered them. But you have the fire within. You have the warmth of your own biology. So, let go. Let the heavy mask of the day fall away. Let the worries of the modern world dissolve like the ice sheets of the past. You are held by the earth. You are held by your own bones. The chin is the final, elegant flourish of a nature that never stops creating. It is the period at the end of the sentence of the face. And now, that sentence is complete. The story is told. The fire is banked. The ancestors are at rest. Sleep now. Sleep in the knowledge of your own ancient and wondrous design. Sleep, and let the legacy in the bone carry you through the night, steady as a ship, strong as a stone, silent as the stars. Good night.